Welcome to NTD News Today. Here are today's top stories. More Senate confirmation hearings today for President-elect Trump's cabinet picks. This as Secretary of State nominee Marco Rubio has already won the support of some Democrats. But that's not the case for some other Trump picks. The key takeaways and what's expected in today's hearings.
This is NTD News Today, live from our global headquarters in New York City.
Today's Thursday, January 16th. I'm Stephanie Cox. Another set of big confirmation hearings today for President-elect Trump's cabinet picks. Among them, Scott Bessent, who as Treasury Secretary would be integral to Trump's promises on tariffs. Here are more details on today's confirmation hearings.
Ahead of his confirmation hearing before the Senate Finance Committee, Treasury Secretary pick Scott Bessent on Wednesday vowed to ensure the dollar remains the world's reserve currency. He said the new Trump administration must prioritize investment that grows the economy over what he called wasteful spending. If confirmed, Bessent would head the Treasury Department at a time when Trump plans to significantly up tariffs on foreign goods. Bessent is a hedge fund manager by trade and has advocated for higher tariffs. Shortly after Trump's election victory, Bessent told Fox News that tariffs could be used as a negotiating tool, as well as a generator of revenue and to protect U.S. industries. But he said tariffs should be introduced gradually. A month earlier, he described Trump's plans as maximalist, suggesting the final tariffs may not be as high as Trump has said. Trump has proposed a 60% tariff on imports from China specifically, and a 10% duty across the board. He has also said he would impose 25% duties on Canadian and Mexican imports until those two countries halt the flow of illegal immigrants and fentanyl into the U.S. For his part, Trump has said he has no intentions of scaling back his tariff policy. Meanwhile, the Senate Energy and Natural Resources Committee will sit down with former North Dakota Governor Doug Burgum. As Interior Secretary, Burgum would be the chief steward of public lands. Trump has also said Burgum will lead a newly created National Energy Council. According to Trump, this council will seek to establish U.S. energy dominance around the world. Scott Turner will appear before the Senate Committee on Banking, Housing, and Urban Affairs. The former NFL player is Trump's choice for Housing and Urban Development Secretary. Turner ran the White House Opportunity and Revitalization Council during Trump's first term. Senators will also hear from Lee Zeldin, who Trump tapped to lead the Environmental Protection Agency. Also Thursday, the Senate Judiciary Committee's hearing with Pamela Bondi will continue. Bondi could become the next Attorney General, though her nomination has senators divided. On Wednesday, Democrats on the committee questioned her impartiality. Bondi denied that she has an agenda to go after political opponents, saying there will never be an enemies list within the Department of Justice.
The confirmation hearing for Lee Zeldin, President-elect Trump's pick to lead the Environmental Protection Agency, is now underway. Let's go there now.
Zeldin to hear about his experience and his vision for how he would prioritize the agency's work on the EPA as the EPA administrator. I believe the EPA must return to its core missions. The EPA also should better manage taxpayers' dollars by doing more with the vast funding that Congress provides. That means reducing, of course, bureaucratic red tape so the state agencies responsible for protecting our nation's air, land, and water can do so without Washington, D.C. getting into the way. Doing so will lead to those state agencies efficiently improving our drinking water systems and issuing relevant air, land, and water permits. It also means prioritizing the EPA's attention towards issues that will help Americans in their daily lives. When the EPA focuses on what it does best, it doesn't just benefit the environment, it benefits our economic growth. For example, the agency should prioritize cleaning up brownfields and Superfund sites to facilitate new economic development of those locations, many of those of which are located in rural and distressed areas. I look forward to hearing Congressman Zeldin's plan to build to build on the work initiated by the first Trump administration, including the EPA, which took the first step to address legacy PFAS contaminants. And as the agency fulfills its obligation under our nation's bedrock environmental laws, the administrator should also take into account the affordability and electric reliability. Recently, the organization responsible for ensuring grid reliability found that more than half of the United States could experience rolling blackouts in the next decade because of the lack of reliable power capacity. Areas at risk and shortages include New England, the Mid-Atlantic, California, the Midwest, and the Great Plains. The reliability risk is due to the projected retirement of dispatchable power plants, compiled with a 15% increase in electricity demand over the next decade. Critically, this demand cannot be met solely with intermittent energy generation. Spiking energy costs and rolling blackouts are an unacceptable fact if the U.S. is to continue as a global leader. Actions that policymakers and regulators take now will determine whether America can thrive in an era with a cleaner environment, energy abundance, lower costs, and economic prosperity, or face it with a path of scarcity, inflation, and stagnation. I support that first option I named and believe our nominee does as well. I have confidence that the EPA under Congressman Zeldin's leadership will focus on the EPA's core mission to protect human health and the environment while acknowledging the critical role the agency plays in our economic and international leadership. In doing so, the EPA can make great progress in addressing key environmental challenges consistent with the authorities that Congress has given the agency. I look forward to discussing these issues with Congressman Zeldin today, and I now recognize my ranking member, Senator Whitehouse, for his opening statement.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Three things. First, I'd like to let everyone know that I like the chairman. That's a good start.
That's a good start.
That's a good start. And in that context, I would like to present her as the new chairman this gavel.
Oh, thank you.
It was made in 1956 of wood from the old West Virginia State House by the McKinley Vocational High School in Wheeling, West Virginia. It was presented to the then governor of West Virginia, Hewlett Smith, who kept it upon his departure. He was term limited out, and that was significant for, among other reasons, that it opened the office to the chairman's father. It did. Archmore. Madam Chair.
Thank you.
May you bang it in good health.
Very nice. Very nice. Thank you.
Second, we have indeed worked well together. We have together successfully advanced nuclear energy reform. We have together successfully encouraged and expanded carbon capture. And the WRDA and highway bills present big bipartisan opportunities for more work together. I even hope together we can revive permitting reform. So there is plenty of good opportunity. And as I speak of bipartisan matters, let me also welcome Senator Curtis, our newly elected member of this committee on the Republican side. Last, I want to show everyone this map of my home state. The bright green parts are parts that are destined to flood permanently, underwater, lost to the sea in decades ahead. Congressman Zeldin will be familiar with this risk from his home, Suffolk County. Fossil fuel pollution is the cause of that. It will change the map of my state, and it will do us crippling economic damage. As I see it, we've been through three eras on climate. First was the era of science, and scientists, our headlights, did their job, predicting accurately what was going to happen. NASA scientists, academic scientists, IPCC scientists, Exxon scientists, they did their job. Next came the era of politics, where it was our job to heed the warnings of science and head off those dangers. We failed, badly, and for the worst of all reasons. We succumbed to a massive, deliberate campaign of lies and corruption by the polluters themselves. That failure ushers in now an era of consequences. consequences we should have headed off but didn't. It's beginning in creeping, seeping inflation as goods become harder to grow, produce, and ship in upended weather patterns. It's upon us already in forward-looking industries like insurance. Good luck with property insurance in Florida and California. The worst danger is systemic economic crashes. One, widely warned of in economic literature, is the carbon bubble, bursting when the international oil cartel or the massive government subsidies cease propping up fossil fuel and stranded assets lose all value and the resulting shock cascades into the global economy. The other, upon us already, is climate risk, making property insurance unaffordable or unavailable, which in turn makes mortgages unavailable, which in turn crashes property values. Remember this map. Before all that land went underwater, it would become uninsurable. And that's still water flooding. Throw in big storms, and there's a whole coastal uninsurability crisis looming. The chief economist for Freddie Mac predicted a coastal property values crash cascading through the economy like the 2008 Great Recession. And that coastal danger is now matched by Western wildfire risk, like we're seeing right now in Los Angeles, launching the same insurance to mortgage to property values collapse. Let's be clear, we are in this perilous place because a campaign of lies and corruption and pollution delivered deliberately and at industrial scale by the fossil fuel industry was accomplished through an armada of paid front groups. And so we're clear, it's not just me warning of significant economic harms ahead. I will circulate to all colleagues, lucky you, this compendium of the published warnings for you and all of your staffs to review. This threat is real. If a sharp-eyed cabin boy on the Titanic had happened that night to see the iceberg ahead, you'd expect him to do whatever he could to fight his way to the captain's table in the fancy dining room and warn of the impending disaster. So please understand that map of my state and the sense of urgency that I feel. I am confident that the chairman would equal me in energy and determination for any similar dangers to her mountain state. And so it is through this lens of urgency that I approach this nomination hearing. President Trump has called climate change a hoax. While running for president, he met with fossil fuel industry executives and told them they should give him $1 billion in exchange for his reversing the rules that protect our air and water and limit the pollution that is driving climate change. And indeed, fossil fuel companies and executives lavished millions and millions of dollars on the Trump campaign and affiliated organizations. These special interests now expect a return on their political investment. They expect a reversal of the already limited protections we have for our air and water. And make no mistake, not only would reversing these protections harm our air, water, public health, and climate, doing so would also cost Americans money, as they would be forced to spend more to fuel their cars, to buy their groceries, to heat and cool their homes and businesses. That's money that would go directly from every hardworking American's wallet into the accounts of billionaire fossil fuel barons and giant oil companies. The question then for Mr. Zeldin here before us as President Trump's nominee to run the Environmental Protection Agency is simple. Will he follow the science and the economics and protect our air, water, and climate? Or will he merely be a rubber stamp for looters and polluters who are setting the Trump agenda? I must say that his role at polluter-funded organizations such as the America First Policy Institute and America First Works, his long list of Trump-affiliated consulting clients, and his anti-climate op-eds paid for by dark money organizations do not give me confidence that he will be an honest broker if confirmed to lead EPA. I really want this to work. That is how high the stakes are. I am not here trying to score points. I'm here trying to steer us away from what I see as a calamity ahead. I will therefore be watching closely today to see if Congressman Zeldin is able to differentiate himself in any substantive ways from the polluter agenda and the economic crashes likely to ensue. Thank you, Madam Chair. Here is to a productive relationship in this important committee.
Thank you, Senator, and thank you for the gavel. That has great meaning to me, so I very much appreciate. I'm actually from the northern part of the state, so where it was made, so thank you. I'm now going to turn to Senator Barrasso, who is going to be introducing Congressman Zeldin.
Thank you very much, Chairman Capito, Ranking Member, White House members of the committee. Thank you for allowing me to be here today to introduce Congressman Lee Zeldin, who has been nominated to be the administrator of the Environmental Protection Agency. The EPA is very important to Wyoming and to the nation. It's responsible for protecting our air, our water, and our communities. Americans deserve clean air and clean water. They also deserve clear rules and common sense from the government. Over the last 4 years, they've gotten neither. The EPA has pushed policies that kill jobs in Wyoming and raise the cost for families across the nation. It has also pursued rules that shut down power generation and threaten electric reliability. Americans should be able to take for granted that the lights will go on when they flip the switch. They should know that those making the rules understand that their livelihoods depend on a balanced and measured approach. Instead, the approach over the last 4 years has been based solely on radical environmentalism. Congressman Zeldin will correct the course of the EPA. He's been highly motivated from a young age, graduated from law school at age 23. He has over 20 years of military experience and service, and he's still counting those because Lieutenant Colonel Zeldin has a range of experience in the Army. He was a military intelligence officer, a prosecutor, and military magistrate. He's a veteran of Operation Iraqi Freedom, where he served in the Army's 82nd Airborne Division as a paratrooper, and just last weekend was on Army Reserve duty. Public service doesn't end there. In addition to his time in the U.S. Congress, he served in the New York State Senate. He knows firsthand how important it is for the federal government to be a partner to states rather than an out-of-touch regulator. This is the dedication and understanding that Lee Zeldin will bring to the EPA. His experience shows that he knows how to balance multiple priorities. He understands that we must be good stewards of the environment without crippling the economy. Many organizations, both public and private, agree that Lee is the right person for the job. One of those organizations is the National Association of Clean Water Agencies. In a letter to the committee, the association said, he has shown a willingness to engage with a broad spectrum of stakeholders to address pressing issues. This approach is critical for achieving EPA's mission in a way that balances environmental protection, they say, and pragmatic public policy implementation. His strong support from his community back home. The Long Island Water Conference has said, quote, we are offering our strong support for fellow Long Islander and New Yorker Lee Zeldin. They go on to say, we believe that Mr. Zeldin's experience will provide a balanced approach to the regulatory process. This will ultimately, they say, provide effective protection of public health and the environment. And reading this about a balanced approach reminded me, and Cynthia might have been there as a young girl, in 1963, John Kennedy, President of the United States, came to Wyoming. He came with Stuart Udall, who was his Secretary of Interior. It was a conservation tour of the West. Stuart Udall, the Interior Department is now, building is named after him, and his son Tom served with many of us on this very committee, sat right there where Senator Padilla is sitting right now. So I brought this picture that has been hanging on my wall in the office in D307, and it's John Kennedy in the field house of the University of Wyoming addressing the largest indoor arena that we had and the largest standing-only crowd in 1963 as part of his conservation tour. And what John Kennedy said that day, he said, we must maintain a living balance between man's actions and nature's reactions. And that's the kind of job that I believe that Lee Zeldin is going to do for our nation at the EPA, maintain a living balance. So I share this organization, the Long Island Water Conference, their confidence that Lee Zeldin will lead the EPA in a more balanced and even-handed direction. So I say, Lee, congratulations on your nomination. I look forward to working with you on these important issues. I once again thank the committee for letting me join you today. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. As a former chair of this committee yourself, we welcome you back anytime. So we're going to switch seats here and ask the nominee to come forward. Somebody needs to take this to get the sign. We didn't want your first utterances to be as a John Barresso imitator, so we wanted to make sure we had the right name. Welcome to the committee, Mr. Zeldin, and I'll look forward to your opening statement. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Capito, Ranking Member Whitehouse, and all the distinguished members of this committee. It's been an honor to meet with all of you to learn more about your highest priorities. I look forward to working with all senators on this committee, on both sides of the aisle, to tackle the most pressing issues facing our country. I humbly sit before you nominated to serve as the 17th Administrator of the Environmental Protection Agency. The American people made their voices heard in November, giving President Trump a mandate to lead our nation to prosperity. I'm grateful that the President-elect is giving me the opportunity to lead the EPA at this critical time. Our mission is simple but essential: to protect human health and the environment. We must do everything in our power to harness the greatness of American innovation with the greatness of American conservation and environmental stewardship. We must ensure we are protecting the environment while also protecting our economy. Throughout my life, I've been privileged to hold such titles as Congressman and State Senator and Lieutenant Colonel, but none has meant more to me than husband, son, and father. While one of my identical twin daughters, Ariana, is now back at college, I'm excited to be joined here today by my wife, Diana, and our daughter, Michaela, as well as my mother, Meryl. The American people need leaders who can find common ground to solve the urgent issues we face. I want my daughters, your loved ones, and every child across our country to thrive in a world with clean air, clean water, and boundless opportunity. If confirmed, I pledge to enthusiastically uphold the EPA's mission. I will foster a collaborative culture within the agency, supporting career staff who have dedicated themselves to this mission. I strongly believe we have a moral responsibility to be good stewards of our environment for generations to come. It's been so motivating to see the tremendous talent stepping up to serve in the EPA. I couldn't be more excited to partner with our EPA team nationwide to exceptionally serve the American public. I had the honor of working with many of you when I represented New York's 1st Congressional District. My district on the eastern end of Long Island was unique in that it was almost completely surrounded by water. My constituents took environmental issues very seriously, and I developed a record in Congress fighting hard and with great success advancing their local priorities. I worked across party lines to preserve the Long Island Sound and Plum Island. I supported key legislation that became historic bipartisan success stories, like the Great American Outdoors Act and Senator Sullivan and Whitehouse's Save Our Seas Act to clean up plastics from our oceans. Whether it was leading the fight for Sea Grant, combating PFAS in drinking water, voting for the Lautenberg Chemical Safety Act, or supporting clean energy projects on Long Island, I was proud to do my part to secure these environmental victories. Georgetown University and the Lugar Center consistently ranked me one of the most bipartisan members of Congress, and to that end, I joined the Bipartisan Climate Solutions Caucus to focus on tackling the challenges of a changing climate. If confirmed, I want to work with all of you to address the unique environmental issues facing your state. Not only do I want to partner with you, I want to learn from you. I ask you all what a former administrator asked a great chairman of this committee from my home state, Senator Daniel Patrick Moynihan. What advice would you give me as I undertake to lead EPA? I look forward to having this discussion with each of you. The EPA must be better stewards of tax dollars, honor cooperative federalism, and be transparent and accountable to Congress and the public. The American people elected President Trump last November, in part due to serious concerns about upward economic mobility and their struggle to make ends meet. Too many of our fellow Americans are trapped in poverty and desperate for a whole-of-government approach to give them a hand up. We can and we must protect our precious environment without suffocating the economy. A big part of this will require building private sector collaboration to promote common sense, smart regulation that will allow American innovation to continue to lead the world. If confirmed, under the EPA, with my leadership, we will prioritize compliance as much as possible. I believe in the rule of law, and I want to work with people to ensure they do their part to protect our environment. Success is defined for many, including me, as leaving this world better than we found it. I want every child in this nation, including my daughters and your children, to inherit a world with clean air, clean water, and a thriving economy. This mission must transcend politics, and I look forward to working with all of you to achieve it. I thank you, Chairman Capito, Ranking Member Whitehouse, and all the members of this committee. I'm eager to answer your questions and discuss the issues facing your constituents.
Thank you. We're now ready to begin with the questioning portion for our witness. Senator Whitehouse and I have agreed to have 2 rounds of 5 minutes for questioning. So let's try to keep our first questions within the 5 minutes in respect for everybody's time. To begin, this committee has 3 standing yes or no questions that it asks all nominees who appear before the committee. So I want to ask you these 3 questions. Do you agree, if confirmed, to appear before this committee or designated members of this committee and other appropriate committees of this Congress to provide information subject to appropriate and necessary security protections with respect to your responsibilities?
Yes.
Do you agree to ensure that testimony, briefings, documents, and electronic and other forms of communications of information are provided to this committee and its staff and other appropriate committees in a timely manner?
Yes.
Thank you. Finally, do you know of any matters which you may or may not have disclosed that may place you in a conflict of interest if you are confirmed?
No.
Thank you. All right. Well, I will begin questioning, and then I'll go to the ranking member. In my opening statement, I talked about reliability issues and affordability issues as we see the face the future here. During the last 4 years, the EPA issued a number of rules, and number is numbers of rules, including the Clean Power Plan 2.0, which was intentionally designed to impose massive new costs on reliable coal-fired and natural gas plants in a deliberate effort to shut these plants down. Unsurprisingly, over this same period of time, the cost of energy skyrocketed 23% over the last 4 years. Now, our nation's electric reliability experts, the North American Electric Reliability Corporation, forecasts over half of the United States could face potential electrical shortages and blackouts in the next decade. This is a dire situation on the reliability. This demand is driven by our onshoring of our manufacturing and powering data centers and other things to win the artificial intelligence race. Congressman Zeldin, as you oversee and implement the EPA's statutory obligations to protect public health and the environment, will you also ensure that the agency takes into account the electric reliability and energy affordability impacts on businesses and American families that needed to keep their lights on and to heat their homes?
Yes, absolutely.
What is your vision for fulfilling the EPA's statutory mission, particularly in the context of getting the agency reoriented back to the basics of protecting communities from air, water, and chemical pollutions and cleaning up contaminated sites? What ideas do you have as moving forward?
Chairman, it's important that the EPA is honoring our obligations under the law, fulfilling the historic landmark laws that are on the books, like the Clean Air Act, the Clean Water Act, the Safe Drinking Water Act. It's important that the EPA is accountable and transparent to all of you here on this committee. It's important that we are working closely in collaboration with career staff at the EPA and working closely with other agencies where there's overlapping jurisdiction to make sure that we are following our new obligations under the law as Congress enacts new laws moving forward, to make sure that we are abiding by the Administrative Procedures Act, that I, as administrator, I'm not prejudging outcomes, that I'm making sure that our actions are durable, that they are able to withstand scrutiny, and at the end of the day, I'm able to sit before you at further hearings and to be able to account for my actions as administrator and our actions as an agency. I look forward to working with all of you in order to make sure that Congress's intent is filled, that we also honor the Loper-Bright decision that was just issued by the Supreme Court to make sure that it is, in fact, Congress's intent that is being implemented, and it's not us as an agency filling in any gaps however we might see fit. It requires a close collaboration, not just internally within the agency, but with each and every one of you as well.
Thank you. Thank you. And I should have welcomed your wife, Diana, and Michaela, and your mother, Meryl. And we miss Ariana, but I hope she's watching it from afar. I want to talk about PFAS. West Virginians have had firsthand experience with PFAS contamination and pollution. Everybody does, but we've had a little more. I think we had a little bit earlier, discovered earlier. And I want to continue. We tried last session to get some leading legislative efforts to try to protect essential service providers and American taxpayers from costly litigation and liability. It's a very complicated issue, as you know, but it speaks to one of the core missions of the EPA, which is safe drinking water and clean water. I understand that your New York district has actually experienced the negative effects of PFAS pollution. If confirmed, how do you plan to address the growing challenge of PFAS pollution through the EPA's existing authorities?
Chairman, when I was in the House, I was a member of the PFAS task force, also voted for the PFAS Action Act. EPA has an important responsibility to make sure that our obligations are implemented correctly. That is something that through our enforcement and compliance, we have to ensure that we are moving the needle all across this entire country. There are cleanup projects, large and small, across America where many Americans have been waiting decades, generations for that leadership and that action. So working with all of you to deal with these issues in your home state is something that will be top priority of mine.
Thank you. I'll turn it over to the ranking member.
Thanks. Before I get to my questions, if you'd be kind enough to entertain a unanimous consent request to put certain documents into the record. Okay. I will not put this beast into the record, to spare everybody that, but I will be circulating it to your offices. I would like to put into the record the cover article from the Economist magazine from this April, warning of the next housing disaster from that climate risk to insurance to mortgages, property values cascade. And we put a lot of work into this when I was chair of the Budget Committee, and I'd also like to put in the report summarizing the evidence we adduced in the Budget Committee on the same insurance crisis.
Without objection.
I have also a letter here from CREW, Citizens for Responsibility and Ethics in Washington, regarding the Zeldin nomination.
Without objection.
And finally, I have a letter dated January 15, 2025, submitted by the Climate Action Campaign and signed by over 70 environmental organizations concerning the nomination.
Without objection.
Great. Thank you very much, Chairman. Mr. Zeldin, welcome. As we discussed when we met, I said I was going to ask you some really basic, no-tricks questions about climate change. So let me just start with those. First, as a matter of law, is carbon dioxide a pollutant?
Thank you, Senator, and I enjoyed our meeting with your team as well, and I look forward to working with all of you. As far as carbon dioxide emitted from you during that question, I would say no. As far as carbon dioxide that is emitted in larger masses that we hear concern about from scientists as well as from Congress, that's something that certainly needs to be focused on for the EPA.
And as a matter of law, it is a designated pollutant, correct?
Senator, while carbon dioxide is not named as one of the 6 in the Clean Air Act, the EPA has been treating it as such.
Yeah, because of a Supreme Court decision that said so, correct?
Correct, yes, Senator.
What effect, briefly and in layman terms, I know you're not a scientific expert, what effect are carbon dioxide emissions from fossil fuel combustion having in the atmosphere?
Senator, while I am someone who believes strongly that we should work with the scientists, leaving the science to the scientists, the policy to the policymakers, and that we all work together. I don't sit before you as a scientist. Fortunately, at EPA, we do have many talented scientists who provide that research. They have that talent to be able to tell us exactly what the metrics are of their research.
Just generally, and in layman's terms, what effects do these carbon dioxide emissions have when they enter the atmosphere?
Trapping heat, Senator.
And what effect, again, briefly in layman's terms, does methane leakage from fossil fuel production and transport have in the atmosphere?
Same.
Heat trapping also. And what effect, I'm from the ocean state, so I've got to ask this one, what effect are carbon dioxide emissions from fossil fuel combustion having in the oceans?
Well, the emissions of greenhouse gases trap heat, Senator. As far as your concern that you expressed at the onset of your testimony as you showed that map of Rhode Island, and as you suggested, and as I mentioned, as I represented the district on the east end of Long Island, rising sea levels are concerns where I'm from as well. And it's one of the reasons why the federal government, through the Army Corps, had to invest in a Army Corps of Engineer project with the revetment of Montauk Lighthouse, with fear that if we did not do that, that Montauk Lighthouse, and due to erosion, would be collapsing into the ocean.
Is it correct that the trapped heat from carbon dioxide emissions and methane in the atmosphere is heating up the oceans? In fact, 90% of the heat goes into the oceans, and that is what is producing the sea level rise you just discussed.
That is what the scientists tell me, Senator.
Yep. And are the oceans also absorbing about 30% of the carbon dioxide itself, and therefore chemically turning more acid in measurable and clear ways?
Senator, as far as any specific numbers, I have to defer to the research of the scientists.
But generally that is happening.
Yes,
There
Senator.
is a link between the fossil fuel emissions and the acidification of the oceans.
Yes, Senator, I do understand that there's litigation here that, to a certain extent, I'm not going to be able to comment on as EPA administrator, but to the general question, yes, Senator.
Yeah. Have we hit the 1.5 degree risk threshold, and why is that important?
Senator, again, as far as being able, throughout today's hearing, to be able to personally be citing and confirming specific numbers, that is something where I have to defer to the talented scientists to be able to provide that advice on an ongoing basis, whether or not we're hitting numbers at any given time.
If you are confirmed, what are the key either climate or oceans tipping points that would concern you?
As far as the tipping point, well, Senator, I think that as you put up a map of your district, I could, and your state, I could put up a map of mine, and we could do this across the entire country. As long as that concern exists, where there is in fact rising sea levels, and I hear it from both sides of the aisle. Senator Collins spoke about it in the context of Maine.
One last question before my time runs out. I'm sorry. Are we now on a pathway to climate safety, or do we need to do more to reduce carbon emissions in order to get on that pathway?
Senator, United States emissions have been going down over the course of the last couple of decades. Unfortunately, there are other countries where it is not going in the same direction. And I would say that we will have never done enough to ensure that our water and our air is clean, safe, and healthy. Whatever we do every day to achieve this objective, we need to wake up the next day looking for ways to do more.
Yes. Let me just explain to the committee, since this is my first rodeo here, what we're going to do is whoever's here at the gavel, we will then put you in line for questioning according to seniority on the dais, and then as you come in, if you come in after I gavel down, you will be placed in line for questions. Certainly, if people need adjustments, we're willing to look at that, but that's going to be the tradition of the committee that we've agreed on. So we'll go to Senator Kramer.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair Capito and Ranking Member Whitehouse. Congratulations to both of you for assuming these important leadership roles, and congratulations to you as well my former colleague in the House, Mr. Zeldin. Thanks for stepping in the gap and taking on this big challenge. I know that Chair Capito has already talked a little bit about what is a really, really important issue for me, and I think for a lot of us, obviously, and that is an appropriate cooperative federalism role between the state and federal governments. And there's a lot of opportunity to do that the right way, and a lot of opportunity to do it the wrong way at the EPA. So I'm going to point to one specific case that I think you're probably familiar with, and that's, of course, the waters of the United States. And you're no doubt aware of that legal, what I call fiasco, surrounding the definition of what constitutes a waters of the United States. This has been litigation ping pong for a long time. And so the first question is a simple one, Mr. Zeldin. When you read the Sackett decision authored by Justice Alito, would you describe it as prescriptive or ambiguous as it comes to the definition of a federally jurisdictional water?
It was clear and prescriptive.
It was. When the decision was issued, the Biden administration officials even told me that the direction from the Supreme Court was clear, that they didn't leave a lot of ambiguity. And here's one portion that I wanted to chat with you about, because I believe it's particularly instructive should you be confirmed. Quote, finally, it is also instructive that the Clean Water Act expressly protects the primary responsibility and rights of states to prevent, reduce, and eliminate pollution, and to plan the development and use of land and water resources. It is hard to see how the state's role in regulating water resources would remain primary if the EPA had jurisdiction over anything defined by the presence of water, unquote. Now, I was tempted to bring the poster, but in previous definitions, as they've gone back and forth, there's one that Sackett was based on, actually, or that would be relevant to Sackett, where the entire state of North Dakota was basically a federal wetland. We're a semi-arid state with badlands and big prairies. Should you be confirmed, it would be really good if the administrator took this decision and the legislative history behind it and start a rulemaking process post-Sackett with the assumption that states have primacy and primary responsibility for water within their states, not the federal government. How do you intend to sort of approach that? Because this post-Sackett WOTUS definition is going to be really, really important.
Yes, Senator. With any rulemaking, as you know, I'm not allowed to prejudge outcomes going in. And it's important that corners aren't cut where durability is sacrificed. Laws are written by Congress, and there are cases that have come out from the Supreme Court that provide the EPA with clear guidance on how we must do our job under the law. It is important that when you're going back to your home state and you're speaking to your farmers, that you are able to, with confidence, be able to explain to them that the federal government is doing our part so that they can define what waters of the U.S. are without them having to go hire an attorney or someone else, pay a lot of money to ensure compliance. So I will make sure that I'm doing my part, that the EPA is honoring the decision of Sackett and any future laws to come out of Congress. That is my commitment to you. And I know that was important when I met with Senator Sullivan as he was speaking about Alaska and wetlands and so many other people on this committee. So I look forward to working with you on that.
That great answer. I appreciate that very much. One of the things that concerns me is when I've heard, in realizing, with regard to WOTUS, you have two agencies that get involved, the permitting side at the Corps of Engineers and the EPA rulemaking. But one of the things in terms of a durable rule that I heard from some from the previous administration or the current administration was that, well, we're going to create a durable rule. And I think the way to do that is to make sure that while we recognize that the law is clear now, the definition's clear, all you have to do is seek a jurisdictional determination from us, the Almighty, and then we'll tell you whether your land meets that definition or not, to which I say, You don't put a police officer on every car. Can we presume that on the very obvious, simple cases that the landowner or the developer already knows the law and doesn't need to seek permission to do what they want to do?
Unfortunately, we face a reality where many farmers don't know whether or not their land, not just farmers, obviously, but a lot of people don't know whether or not their land has waters of the U.S. on it. And I would say that that is a failure on the part of the federal government. You should be able to go to your landowners, and they should be able to, with confidence, be able to tell you without having to ask questions whether or not waters of the U.S. are on their property.
Well, thank you for that. I can tell you North Dakota farmers are pretty bright. They know, it's just that the bureaucrats didn't. And now hopefully the Supreme Court's cleared that up. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Sanders.
Thank you. Congratulations on your new title here. Mr. Zeldin, thanks so much for coming in the office the other day. I enjoyed our chat. Mr. Zeldin, 2024, as you know, was the hottest year in recorded history. The past 10 years have been the hottest 10 years on record. We have seen in recent years unprecedented fires in the West Coast and in Canada, and we're seeing the horrific situation in LA right now. We have seen unprecedented flooding in China, displaced millions of people there. Unprecedented drought in Brazil, Africa, and elsewhere. And in Southern Africa, people are dying because of the drought and their inability to grow crops. Billions of people have been sweltering in Europe and elsewhere in unprecedented heat waves. In the midst of all of that, President-elect Trump has said that climate change is a hoax. You will be, if confirmed, one of the leading spokespeople in this country, representing us throughout the entire world. Do you agree with President-elect Trump that climate change is a hoax?
Well, first off, Senator, it was great to meet with you as well. I believe that climate change is real, as I told you. As far as President Trump goes, the context that I've heard him speak about it was with a criticism of policies that have been acted because of climate change, and I think that he's concerned about the economic costs of some policies where there's a debate and a difference of opinion between parties.
I would respectfully disagree with you. I think he has called it a hoax time and time and time again. And I would just say for the record that, and let me ask you this question, all right? Some of us have used the word existential threat. What we're seeing in LA right now is apocalyptic, and the other terrible weather disturbances, whether in the Midwest of this country, whether in many states that are represented right here. Unprecedented floods in my small state of Vermont. We've been hit over and over again in recent years. Our state capital, Montpelier, was underwater recently in a way that we have not seen. Would you describe climate change as an existential threat, meaning that there must be an urgency to get our act together, to address it?
Senator, we must, with urgency, be addressing these issues. And today, as we talk about any way at all that the EPA can do its part to make sure that our air and water are cleaner, healthier, and safer.
Staying on the one, look, EPA has enormous responsibilities over an enormous number of areas. I'm focusing on picking up what Senator Whitehouse said. I worry very much. Do you have kids?
Yes, Senator.
Okay. I worry. Many of us have kids. We have grandchildren. This is serious stuff. This is beyond politics, my friends. This is the future of humanity. And if we do not get our act together, and that is not just the United States of America, this requires international cooperation. So let me ask you another difficult question. If tomorrow, magically, the United States Congress did all of the right things, that would not be enough. Climate change is a global crisis. It requires the cooperation of China, Russia, Europe, Latin America, etc. Are you prepared to represent the United States aggressively with some of your colleagues in reaching out to countries all over the world to cut carbon emissions?
Senator, it's very important for I, as administrator of EPA, whether traveling to the G7 or the G20 or elsewhere, to be reaching out to these other countries to make sure that there is a pressure on other nations to do their part as well. And it is my job to stay up at night, to lose sleep at night, to make sure that we are making our air and our water cleaner.
All right, I know it's fashionable to be beating up on China. It's good politics. They are now the major carbon polluter in the world. We have historically had that role. We're now number 2. We're not going to solve this crisis without working with China. Are you and hopefully your colleagues, if you are confirmed, prepared to work with China to try to lower carbon emissions?
Senator, on many different issues, it is important not just to be working with nations that we are the strongest aligned with, but to also be in communication and engaged in dialogue with countries that might be considered competitors and also our greatest adversaries. And right now, China is an adversary in many respects.
Okay. As part of the IRA, had a provision in there for, I believe, $7 billion to lower electric bills for working class people all over this country by helping them install solar panels on their roof. We did it, my wife and I did it in our house. Our electric bill went down by 80%. Problem is many working class, lower income people can't afford the initial cost to install the solar panels. That's what this bill does. Can I have your word right now that you will work with me to make sure that Solar for All program is rapidly and effectively implemented all over the country?
Senator, it is my obligation on this and every other law enacted by Congress that I will follow my obligations under the law. And when it comes to spending money, it is important that I have the ability to sit before you and account for every dollar that's being spent by the EPA. So I know that this is an important priority of you and solar power.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Almost saved by the bell.
That was the fossil fuel industry.
I look forward to working with you on the Senator.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Senator Curtis.
Thank you. And before I begin, just a big thanks to all my colleagues on the committee, Madam Chair, Mr. Ranking Member, and all my colleagues. Really look forward to working with you on this committee, and I'm very excited to be part of this. Mr. Zeldin, I'm from Utah. In Utah, we're pretty proud of our beauty, of our natural resources. It really would be hard to find a more spectacular place in the United States. Everything from 5 national parks, arches and monuments and ski resorts. And I think because of that, Utahns have this inherent desire to take care of it, to leave it better than we found it, to make sure that we're not polluting. I can find total agreement in Utah that less pollution is better than more pollution, less emissions is better than more emissions, and that we want to leave the earth better than we found it. And you and I had the benefit of working together in the House. And I just want to use this opportunity to thank you for your support of my work in talking about climate, talking about some of these issues that are being addressed this morning. And I just, for all my colleagues who didn't see us work together in the House, I just want to emphasize how helpful you were getting Republicans talking about climate and dealing with some of these serious issues. I don't know if you want to comment on that or have any thoughts on that.
Well, Senator, congratulations. I'm looking forward to serving with you in this new capacity, and I enjoyed our work together. I would say that there's a lot that should unite Republicans and Democrats, conservatives and liberals as it relates to the environment. I represented a district where people who are conservative Republicans would be able to unite with people who identify as more liberal Democrats to focus on making our environment better. That type of work together, that common ground, is what the American public are desperate for. They are looking for us to be able to find pragmatic, common sense solutions to be able to represent their interests here in D.C.
Yeah, and I'll just double down. My experience is you're the right person to do that, and I appreciate your efforts. Now, all of that said, let me talk about some problems in Utah, and some of that has to do with our geology and geography. And you and I, when you were in my office, we talked specifically about the Uinta Basin. 80% of the methane that is registered in the basin doesn't come from traditional fossil fuel sources. It comes from ground sources. It comes from air that comes into the region. And yet they're judged and measured on that whole 100%, not the 20% that they admit. Our geography also surrounds us with mountains. we like to call them real mountains as opposed to the hills that we have on the East Coast. And that traps in.
Wow.
Good way to start on the committee.
I'm from the mountain state.
That traps in.
You want to rephrase that?
That traps in all the emissions, and they're caught in that area. And so part of our discussion in my office, and I'd like to talk about today, is asking from your agency an acknowledgement that despite sometimes our best efforts, and I will tell you in Utah, government, education, business leaders, civic leaders have all come together to try to lower these emissions and meet these standards. But because of these, sometimes we can't. I'd love to work with your administration to figure out how we fairly measure that. Could you comment on that?
Yes, Senator. I look forward to being able to work with you and every senator on this committee. I want to make sure that our teams are working together. I sat on the other side of many of these hearings. And one of my greatest frustrations as a member of the House of Representatives was to send a letter, send a follow-up letter, send another letter, and then you're at a hearing following up on your third letter, and the person who's testifying before you is acting as if they haven't received your first, second, or third. That collaboration is very important so that when I'm sitting here before you, that I am able to be accountable to all of you, and that when you need something from the EPA and you're asking a question, that we're able to provide prompt answers. Part of this, too, is a relationship and understanding every important local priority of each of you in your home states. I want to be able to travel to your states, to be able to see firsthand on the ground whatever are your top priorities. And I know, Senator, you have many top priorities in Utah. I look forward to visiting Utah and being able to see for myself and bringing a team.
Thank you. Would love to have you there. And giving your regional administrator some flexibility, and also, for instance, flexibility in things like technology, being agnostic to the technology and being more focused on the end result, I think would help us get some better results. Finally, in the last few seconds, your predecessor in the House had to deal with me every time that he would come before us talking about his low approval rate on getting chemicals approved. They are 0% of statutory requirement getting these chemicals approved. And I would joke with him, like, you could actually, it's statistically impossible. You could stumble on some approvals, right, accidentally. So I just want to warn you that I'm going to be as tough on you as I was on him, and that this is important. A lot of these chemicals can replace some of these PFAS chemicals, and if we can't get them approved, it just makes the difficulty of getting these off the market near impossible. So look forward to working with you on that, and look forward to seeing you in the mountains of Utah. I yield my time.
Your seat has been relocated over there by Senator Moran. Senator Merkley.
Thank you, and I'm completely down with Senator Curtis's description. My daughter and I went by U-Haul across the country, starting on the East Coast, and we went through those East Coast hills, and by the morning of the third day, she woke up and saw the mountains. We were in the middle of the Rockies, and her eyes got wide, and she said, "Now I understand, well, Dad, why you say the only real mountains are in the West." So let's just say it's a bipartisan fact agreed to right here. Mr. Zeldin, you have made an emphasis on the science being the foundation. And one of the concerns that I have is regard to the role of paid influencers. And you have reported that you have been paid to do various op-eds. Would you provide to the committee a list of all of the payments you've received and who is paying you, and a copy of the op-eds you prepared, so that we have a complete understanding of your background in that area?
Yes, Senator, and I also have provided that as part of my financial disclosure, and both ethics at EPA and the Office of Government Ethics has reviewed all of those submissions in providing that clearance letter to the committee.
Yes, we do have your financials. They do not give the details on the text of which op-eds, and sometimes it's obscured. For example, the $50,000 to $100,000 that you were paid for op-eds, but it also says speaking fees, use of media studio, and so forth. So if you could tie the actual payments for the op-eds to the op-eds you wrote, so it's just so we have a clear and transparent understanding of that piece, because we want to have our folks serve the public interest and have that foundations of science you're speaking to, but I think the citizens deserve to understand as we wrestle with this moment. That background, and also the background, you've rented out your media studio multiple times. Was that for doing interviews? Did you do interviews in your media studio and then you asked to be paid for using your own media studio for interviews?
So twofold. First off, the first point, I have provided a breakdown of every individual op-ed as well as the publication and the date of the publication. Any further, if you need us to print up what was referenced, we're happy to do that. And as far as the media studio, I owned a media studio. So networks could rent, can use that studio for a TV hit.
Thank you. Appreciate that, those details, and we'll take a look at that list. You've also, over the course of your career, received a lot of campaign funding from the oil and gas industry. I think it's estimated at $270,000. Can you assure citizens that the campaign support you received from oil and gas industry will not influence your service to the public of the United States?
Yes, Senator. There's no donation that anyone has ever provided me at any point of any amount that is going to influence any decision that I make in this position or beyond.
Second, I want to emphasize the point that my colleagues have made about climate change. We are seeing a massive loss of insurance policies on the West Coast and in Florida. In Florida, 16 companies have gone bankrupt. Another 16 have stopped issuing policies. State Farm has withdrawn a massive number of policies from California. We had 6 towns burned to the ground in my home state of Oregon, less well publicized across the country. So it is really a challenge. Huge number of folks in California are having to go to a state program they created, same in Florida, because no insurance would insure properties. The problem with those is there's no great solution. They're extremely expensive and difficult and have very limited coverage. All right, so I want to continue on plastics. I've been very concerned about plastics. We have more and more articles. This article I'll submit for the record. Thank you. Washington Post has just found out about the threat between microplastics and cancer, and it goes on to talk about colon cancer, the imbalance of antioxidants, lung cancer. We've had a whole series of articles about heart disease. We have this article, Bioaccumulation of Microplastics in Human Brains, out of New Mexico. It's out for peer review right now.
There are real consequences to controlled media. And NTD's founders know them firsthand. Our freedom of thought is the price. This is the lesson that guides us in everything we do.
So there's the tear gas there.
We know the value of a free society. And we take seriously the responsibility to preserve it. We are NTD.
The Los Angeles red flag fire warning has expired, but danger still exists as firefighters are still battling the blazes. Here's an update from officials.
Efforts to reset department staffing to ensure our personnel get the much needed and overdue rest and recovery they require after being at work and on the line for the last 8 to 9 days straight without a break. I'm also mindful that many of our firefighters will continue to be assigned to these ongoing incidents, working side by side with fellow first responders. Yesterday, the Los Angeles County Fire Department made good progress towards partnering with a reputable 501c3 that will be able to accept cash, checks, and electronic donations for the Los Angeles County Fire Department. I ask interested donors to be patient as we finalize our donation process, and I thank you for wanting to support our brave Los Angeles County Fire Department firefighters. I would now like to introduce Jerry Magana, Deputy Incident Commander, CAL FIRE Incident Management Team 2.
Thank you, Chief. Good morning. Once again, Jerry Magana, Deputy Chief Incident Commander for both the Palisades and the Eaton incident. In the last 24 hours, there has been little to no fire growth. With the exception on the Palisades, we've had several interior pockets continuing to burn. Threats still exist with structures and critical infrastructure, and crews continue to strengthen fire perimeter and coordinate infrastructure repairs. USAR operations continue on both incidents and are moving quickly through the areas with minimal impact. We continue to pre-position resources, and we currently have a mobilization center in Riverside County at Beaumont that are available for any potential new starts. CAL FIRE will continue to support our partners in Unified Command, and we would like to request that you remain patient with us during this difficult time. For the most current fire information, please visit fire.ca.gov. And next, I'd like to introduce LA City Fire Chief.
Well, good morning, everyone. And due to the continued around-the-clock efforts of our firefighters, first responders, and all those that are assigned to the incident, we are very fortunate that this last wind event did not cause any expansion of the Palisades fire. In addition, as I mentioned yesterday, the brush fire in the Lakeview Terrace area of Los Angeles was aggressively attacked and halted. We truly appreciate the community and how they've remained alert and followed all advice. Together, we are able to move forward in the recovery of these devastating fires. As we take a step back and we've made it through this wind event, I think it's really important, just briefly, we talk about the winds aren't necessarily here in the city, but with that, we still have, a large amount of unburned dry fuel with low humidity. We need to make sure that the community is thinking about how to prepare and prevent at this point, and also what we just heard is there's a potential Santa Ana winds coming on Monday and Tuesday. Now, to focus on a different area as we're coming out of these wind events for unimpacted areas of the city, just as we take a big step back. There are more extreme winds on the horizons, like I said, next week, and our community needs to remain ready. It is important that you protect yourselves and your family by planning, preparing, and staying aware. Flying embers from a wildfire can destroy homes over a mile away. Taking the necessary measures to prepare your home can help increase its chance of survival when wildland fires strike. Clear all brush within 200 feet of your home. Allow the LAFD and other first responders that fighting chance to respond quickly if a wildfire reaches your community. For more information, visit lafd.org/wildfire. I will now provide an update on the Palisades fire. The fire is 23,713 acres with 22% containment with 5,032 personnel assigned. Using infrared mapping, air and ground resources continue to seek out hotspots and putting them out. Favorable weather conditions assisted firefighters in increasing the containment and extinguishment. Now, I know that the question of all of us up here is on the top of your minds of when we can return and you can return back to the communities. I can tell you, know that we are working as quickly as possible to do just that, to make sure that this is safe for you to return to your communities. The ongoing search and rescue mission continues to limit utility agencies' abilities to repair infrastructure. I can tell you the entire city family is working collaboratively to get you back into your homes and communities as soon and as safely as possible. I just want to give you one small example of this. Yesterday, our hazmat teams from across the state worked tirelessly for the purpose of ensuring that when the evacuation orders are lifted, our community members can rest assured that their homes have been scanned and screened and cleared of any dangerous chemicals. This will take time. So, when we ask you to remain patient, know that together we are working around the clock to get you back to your homes and to the community. With that, I would now like to introduce Sheriff Luna.
Good morning, Robert Luna, Sheriff of Los Angeles County. Personnel deployment, it remains about the same. We've have about 1,300 deputies to both incidences, both at the Eaton Fire and Palisades Fire. We have about 220 California Highway Patrol officers. The governor asked that we surge more CHP officers into both areas from a looting perspective, so they've been working with our folks to do that, so I thank the governor for his support. We still have assistance from the Drug Enforcement Administration, from the Los Angeles field office. We have over 20 agents with us that are assisting us, and we still continue to have well over 900 California National Guard personnel that are assisting multiple agencies in our area, the impacted area here. Evacuation orders remain. They fluctuate between 100 here, 100 there. They go up, they go down, but under evacuation orders, about 82,400. Warnings, about the same as yesterday, 90,400. Please keep up with the information we're putting out because that could change, hopefully for the better, but we'll see what happens. The curfew is still in effect from 6 p.m. To 6 a.m. So again, you don't belong there, please do not go there. Regarding arrest for the LA County Sheriff's area, our total is at 47. We have 36 at the Eaton incident and 11 at the Palisades incident. Palisades increased by several. Last night, 3, 36, or I'm sorry, Eaton did not increase. The arrests that we continue to see, and I want to just a point of clarification for our community members. One is I talk about curfew, which takes place from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. There is another penal code that we use during the day, because if you are not supposed to be in an evacuation order area and a law enforcement officer, deputy sheriff, CHP officer, LAPD, whoever it is, tells you to leave and you refuse to leave, you are subject to arrest during the day as well. I just want to clarify that again, if you do not have any legitimate business, day or night, do not go. You are subject to arrest. Regarding search and rescue operations, my other partners that have come before me, I think we're making it pretty clear that there are multiple reasons why we cannot let people in yet. Yes, we're trying to work towards that. I'm going to say it's probably at least a week out. You've heard that already. Our search and rescue operations continue in both the Eaton and Palisades area. Searches are continuing, and we still have a variety of work and structures to go through. But even as we're going through some of these grids, there are areas that we are holding because we believe there may be deceased victims there. We have to hold for the right time and the right resources to process the scene correctly. And that's going to take a little while. Please be patient with us. We know people want to get back into their neighborhoods, but we're talking about people who have passed. And that's not always a good thing to talk about. In regards to deaths, unfortunately, we did go up by 2 yesterday, one in the Eaton area and one in the Palisades area. And we continue to work with multiple partners, not only in the recovery of remains, but then ultimately the notification or identification of the deceased, and then the notification to the next of kin with our partners at the Los Angeles County Medical Examiner's Office.
Secretary of State Antony Blinken is delivering remarks right now about the proposed ceasefire deal in Gaza.
How does it feel to have your legacy be genocide. How does it feel to have your legacy be genocide? You too, Matt. You smirk through the whole thing every day. You smirk through a genocide.
Thank you. And thank you, Matt. Now, I've got a few more things to say, and then I'm happy to take any question about anything, as we've done these past 4 years. And indeed, I'll talk a little bit about the developments the last few days as well. But I first really wanted to say thank you to each and every one of you. And also thank you to,
maybe not everyone.
Well, okay, there's an asterisk, and yes, thank you, Matt Lee. But also to a remarkable press team here, led by Matt Miller, who do the work every day of trying to make sure that you're informed, the American people are informed. Let me also just take a step back before diving into the developments of this week, these last days, just to consider how far we've come over these past 4 years, and also to think a little bit about where we might be going from here. When President Biden took office, the United States faced the worst public health crisis in more than a century. It faced the worst economic crisis since the Great Depression, and unprecedented breaches with allies and partners around the world. Our adversaries saw a historic opportunity to work together to challenge our interests, to challenge our global standing, to challenge the international system of rules and principles on which our security and prosperity depend. First time I had an opportunity to speak at length in this role, I laid out how we would work to leverage American diplomacy to safeguard and accelerate America's renewal, how we would reimagine and revitalize our greatest strategic asset, our unmatched network of allies and partners, to deliver on issues that actually matter in the lives of our fellow citizens, matter in their livelihoods, matter in their futures, and to defend against increasingly assertive and aggressive revisionist authoritarian powers. And also, how we'd modernize our own diplomacy to try to deliver on these priorities, to ensure that this department is ready to meet the tests of a more contested, a more complicated, a more combustible world. As President Biden emphasized when he was here on Monday, thanks to historic investments at home and around the world, the United States can now operate from a position of greater strength to tackle all of these challenges. Our adversaries and competitors are weaker. Our strategy of renewal to set the stage for America to win the fierce competition, to shape a new era of international affairs to the benefit of our people, to the benefit of people around the world. And I think this week was another reminder, both of the power and the purpose of American leadership and American diplomacy. Over 15 months of devastating conflict between Israel and Hamas, we've worked to broker a deal that would bring hostages home, that would stop the fighting, that would surge humanitarian aid to people who so desperately need it, that would create the space to conclude a permanent ceasefire. We now have that, and we expect implementation of the agreement to begin on Sunday. As President Biden said yesterday, after more than 400 days of struggle, a day of success has arrived. I want to thank our fellow mediators, Qatar and Egypt, for their extraordinary partnership. And I want to thank my colleagues, in particular, Jake Sullivan, Bill Burns, Brett McGurk, for their remarkable skill, tireless dedication over these many months of negotiation.
Will you recognize the Geneva Conventions apply to the Palestinians?
And again, I'm happy to address questions when we have a chance. I'm happy to address questions in a moment. Thank you. This is a moment of tremendous relief for Israelis and Palestinians alike. The daughter of one hostage spoke for many when she said, "I can't wait to see them come back to their families. I'm so desperate to see them." A mother of 5 displaced from Gaza City said simply, "We are being reborn." It's also a moment of historic possibility for the region and well beyond. It's going to take tremendous effort, political courage, compromise to realize that possibility, to try to ensure that the gains that have been achieved over the past 15 months at enormous, excruciating cost are actually enduring, to manage the still profound risks, to deliver on the promise of a more integrated Middle East. And simply put, to forge this reality, there are 2 immediate imperatives. First, to fully implement the ceasefire deal. And then second, to finalize a plan, an effective plan, as I spelled out earlier this week, that provides for Gaza's transitional governance, its security, its reconstruction, and that can make the halt in fighting endure. Delivering on these two priorities will, in turn, create the conditions for Israel and Saudi Arabia to normalize relations between them, which will require a credible pathway to a Palestinian state. On each of these imperatives, we've delivered concrete progress and we've laid a foundation for success, which we will hand over to the incoming administration. Together, they represent a historic opportunity to advance the long-term interests of the United States, our partners in the region, and around the Middle East. In Ukraine as well, we've seen the results of steadfast American leadership. We rallied and kept together some 50 countries to help Ukraine defend itself from Putin's war of aggression. Through Ukrainian courage and also Western resolve and firepower, Ukraine repelled Russia's invasion and took back half the territory it originally seized. We've marshaled commitments from countries around the world that will help Ukraine deter and defend against future attacks and stand on its own feet militarily, economically, democratically. We've also imposed the most ambitious sanctions and export controls ever on Russia, cutting off its biggest banks, reducing dramatically Europe's reliance on Russian energy, oil and gas, almost to zero at this point. As a result of some of our latest sanctions, Russian oil tankers are piling up along the Chinese coast, unable to offload. Ukraine will continue to stand as an independent, democratic nation anchored in the West with the freedom to choose its own future. If we sustain our support for Ukraine, if we continue to exacerbate Putin's growing manpower and economic dilemmas, we can continue to help Ukrainians gain leverage to negotiate a just and secure peace. Now, I got back from what was my 21st trip to the Indo-Pacific in this job just a short while ago, a region where the United States is now competing from a position of strength. We brought our regional allies together, our partners together, around a shared vision for a free and open Indo-Pacific, where goods and ideas and people flow freely, where rules are applied fairly and transparently, where countries are free to choose both their own path and their own partners. We enhanced bilateral relationships with our core treaty allies, with Japan, South Korea, Australia, the Philippines. We forged a new era of trilateral cooperation with Japan and Korea, with Japan and the Philippines as well. We re-energized the Quad with Japan, India, Australia, strengthened our relationships with ASEAN, the Pacific Island countries, elevated partnerships with Vietnam and Indonesia. As the DPRK and the PRC continue to fuel Putin's war of aggression against Ukraine, underscoring how European and Asian security are indivisible, we've also built enduring bridges between our Pacific and Atlantic allies and partners. Australia, Japan, and South Korea have provided important support to Ukraine. In 2021, European allies were on the verge of signing a massive trade agreement with China. Now they're coordinating with us on everything from investment screening mechanisms to supply chain resilience to pushing back on China's overcapacity and unfair trade practices. At the same time, we've managed our competition with China responsibly so it doesn't veer into conflict, while also cooperating on challenges where the world expects great powers to lead and where it's clearly in the interest of the American people, from climate change to fentanyl. We've also demonstrated that other countries can rely on the United States to tackle some of our biggest shared challenges and deliver on some of our own on their own national aspirations, preventing disease outbreaks, enhancing food security, accelerating the clean energy transition, bringing together a global coalition of more than 160 countries to address the synthetic opioid crisis. As we celebrate the return of hostages in Gaza, including Americans, as we look to relief for the people of Gaza, I'm also thinking of all those U.S. citizens who are held wrongfully, who are hostage in countries around the world. I carried with me.
Miller says he doesn't know about the Hannibal Directive.
Again, I'm happy to address questions in a few more minutes. I look forward to answering questions in a few more minutes. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Let him answer some questions.
I look forward to answering questions. Thank you.
Instead of making another speech every day.
Sir, would you like to be escorted out?
Go away.
You don't have the responsibility to tell me where to go. Do you want to be escorted out or not?
Thank you. I look forward to answering questions in a minute. Thank you.
I'm not a potted plant.
Everyone will have an opportunity to ask a question in just a minute. Thank you.
Miller has explicitly told me he will not answer my questions. I'm justified in
So-
what I'm doing.
I have no greater pleasure in this job than crossing off a list I carry in my pocket, the names of those who had been arbitrarily detained and unfairly held hostage, unjustly held hostage and bringing them home, returning them to their families, returning them to their loved ones. Finally, I just wanted to share this morning.
Get your hands off me. Get your hands off me. Get your hands off me. Answer a damn question.
I look forward to answering questions in a few minutes.
You know about Israel's nuclear weapons. Everybody from the ICJ. I was sitting here quietly, and now I'm being manhandled by 2 or 3 people. You pontificate about a free press. You pontificate about a free press. You are hurting me. You are hurting me. You are hurting me. I am asking questions after being told by Matt Miller that he will not answer my questions until I'm asked.
Please, sir, respect the process. We'll have an opportunity to take questions in a few minutes.
Wasn't the point of the May 31st statement to block the ICJ orders? You blocked the ICJ orders.
Please, sir, respect the process. Thank you.
Oh, respect the process. Respect this process while everybody from Amnesty International. From Amnesty International to the ICJ saying that Israel is doing genocide and extermination, and you're telling me to respect the process. Criminal, why aren't you in The Hague? Why aren't you in The Hague? Why aren't you in The Hague?
Finally, we've worked to modernize our diplomacy so that we're more agile, we're more effective, we're more prepared for the challenges of a new era. We've reorganized this department to lead on issues that increasingly animate our diplomacy, whether it's emerging technology, public health, strategic competition, economic statecraft. We've embraced new tools and approaches, from integrating data and AI into the work that we do, strengthening our capacity to anticipate, to plan for risks, as well as opportunities in this more volatile world. Maybe most important, we've invested in our people, improving our hiring and retention practices, diversifying our workforce, strengthening our training, providing more support to employees throughout their careers. We've hired the largest Foreign Service Officer class in more than a decade, and we've grown our Civil Service Corps at the fastest rate in more than 20 years. It was gratifying to me, and I think to everyone in this department, that among the first and last stops President Biden made in his tenure was right here at the State Department. I think that is powerful evidence of the trust that he placed in us to carry out this country's foreign policy. Our diplomats represent this country with exceptional skill, with professionalism, with heart. They often do so at great personal sacrifice, little fanfare, in some of the world's most challenging environments. It has been, simply put, the greatest of honors to be able to work shoulder to shoulder with them. These past 4 years, there have also been moments of disappointment, of hardship, of heartbreak. But I leave this job knowing that we spent every day thinking about and working toward what we believe is best for our people, the citizens we have the immense privilege of representing. And I'm confident we leave office with our country and with this department in a much stronger position than we found it. Now, with that, one last time, I look forward to taking some questions. Mr. Miller.
Thank you very much, Mr. Secretary, and thank you for the very opening comments about the work, the cooperation with us, the press corps. Even when we haven't always been satisfied with the answers, we do certainly appreciate your willingness to engage with us, and so thank you for that. I want to start, actually I only have one question. Exactly 16 years ago today, January 16th, 2009, former outgoing Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice had her final press briefing here. And all of the questions she got were about Israel and Gaza. Every single one of them. And she said, we were working on an enduring ceasefire. She was about to sign an agreement with then Foreign Minister Livni that would move toward that way. She was working with international partners. Names have changed, but countries pretty much the same: Egypt, the Europeans, the Gulf Arab states. And so 16 years ago, we were in the same situation that we're in now, particularly because this ceasefire, current one, still seems to be in limbo. I'm wondering if you can point to any progress that has been made over the course of the Bush administration, the Obama administration. Has there been anything that has changed or given you hope? Because we're basically back in the same position we were 16 years ago.
Yeah. Thank you, Matt. This is a long story. It's an enduring story. It's a story that is not likely to end anytime soon. And if you go back over the course of many administrations, not only Secretary Rice, but so many of our predecessors, and so many of her successors, and now me, this is a story that we've been engaged in, one way or another. And I think each of us has probably brought the conviction to it that we could and should do everything possible to try to get to and write a better conclusion, a good conclusion for the story. And so many of us, for many years, have labored to do just that. I think one of the lessons that we have to take away is that as resourceful and as powerful as we are, at the end of the day, we can't make decisions for others. They have to make them. They have to make hard choices. They have to take chances. We can do everything possible to push, to prod, to encourage, to support, but ultimately the decision lies with those most directly concerned. That's one thing. But the second thing is, and I believe this strongly, there's also no substitute for our engagement, for the efforts that we make in trying to move this forward and get to a better place. And yes, we have absolutely seen both progress and promise. And the question is whether leaders on all sides, with the people behind them, will find a way to seize on those opportunities. So, as I laid out in some detail just the other day, when we took office, we were very focused on pursuing greater integration in the region as the real answer to creating more security, more peace, more opportunity for people. Not trying to change individual countries, governments, societies, but bringing them closer together. And before October 7th, we'd done a lot of work on this integration, building on the Abraham Accords of the first Trump administration, pointing toward the normalization of relations between Saudi Arabia and Israel. And as you all know, we were all planning to go to Saudi Arabia and Israel because we'd made so much progress on the normalization accords on October 10th, a trip that of course didn't happen, to do two things: to try to help finalize agreements that were necessary to get to normalization, and as part of that, to find a clearer way forward, a pathway to a Palestinian state, vital to Saudi Arabia, very important to us as well. Even with everything that's happened since October 7th, I believe strongly, including from my many conversations with leaders in the region, whether it's in Israel, in Saudi Arabia, or beyond, that the desire to pursue integration, the desire to bring countries together, remains strong, remains powerful, and can be a driving force for finally resolving some of these other questions, including the Palestinian question. Israel's deepest desire from day one of its founding was to be treated like any other country in the region, to have normal relations. And it's been demonstrated that that's possible and desired. But it requires, among other things, ending the conflict in Gaza, which we are now on the verge of doing as a result of everything that we have put into this. An agreement that President Biden put forward before the world in May, got the entire world to endorse. And in the months since, we've been working to negotiate the final details and get it implemented. And that's where we are now. So, end Gaza is one. And then, yes, a credible pathway to a Palestinian state is two. And leaders will have to summon the vision and the courage to do that. I laid out some ideas for how you can get there just the other day, but I believe that is possible. I believe the driving desire for integration is something that can carry this forward. Finally, I'll say this. We've also seen, as a result of so much of the work that we've done, what the possibilities are. For Israel, when it was attacked in an unprecedented way by Iran, a direct attack with hundreds of missiles, hundreds of drones. Not only did we come to Israel's active defense for the first time ever, we brought other countries along to do that, including countries in the region. And Israel now sees powerfully what it stands to gain from greater integration in the region, including in a common security architecture. All can see that this is a way to effectively isolate the troublemaker in the region, Iran. So all of that is there, all of that is possible, and I think for the incoming administration, it'll be important to continue to show, here's one path, and what can be achieved by following that path. And then there's another, which is perpetual violence, destruction, terrorism, despair for people. That's the choice. I think we've now put in place and done the work that handing it off can be used to build a strong foundation and move down that much more positive path.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Thank you for your service. Thank you for doing this. I trust you're not going to miss the million of miles that you've done in the last 4 years, and that you're happy to finally see your children. I wanted to ask you on Gaza, of course. You mentioned a tremendous relief in the region, both with Palestinians and Israel. There seems to be uncertainty for the ceasefire. And it was announced yesterday, and it's supposed to be implemented on Sunday. That's 4 days, quite a long time. Israel has led new strikes upon Gaza today or overnight. How confident are you that this ceasefire is actually going to happen? And if I may, just a broader question, or after the 4 years, or your 4 years, and now that your tenure is coming up, what is your proudest accomplishment in these 4 years, and what is your biggest disappointment?
So on the ceasefire, yes, I am confident, and I fully expect that implementation will begin, as we said, on Sunday. Look, it's not exactly surprising that in a process, in a negotiation that has been this challenging and this fraught, you may get a loose end. We're tying up that loose end as we speak. I've been on the phone in one way or another all morning with Brett McGurk, with our Qatari friends, and I'm very confident that this is moving forward, and we'll see the start of implementation of the agreement on Sunday. In terms of my own tenure and what I take from it, and I think there'll be plenty of opportunity to reflect on that in the weeks and months ahead. Look, in terms of satisfaction, as I said at the outset, we came in knowing that we had to reset the foundation for American diplomacy and American foreign policy. And resetting that foundation meant, as I've said, re-engaging, rejuvenating, reimagining these alliances and partnerships. It's the greatest strength that we bring to virtually every issue we have to tackle around the world. These voluntary partnerships and alliances that have stood us in such good stead over so many years, and I think are vital to effectively operating in this more complicated, this more contested, this more combustible world. And that's exactly what we did. But the point is not doing that for the sake of doing it. The point is doing it for the sake of more effectively dealing with the world we're operating in, and I think we've demonstrated that. When Ukraine was attacked by Russia, because of the investments that we'd made in our partnerships and our alliances, we were able to bring together 50 countries, keep them together, and marshal their focus and their resources on helping to defend Ukraine. And we've done that very successfully. And we've done that in a way where many other countries picked up the burden. When it comes to maybe the biggest systemic challenge that we face in the international system, and that is China and the capacity that it has, uniquely, whether it's militarily, whether it's economically, whether it's diplomatically, to reshape the international order. What we've been able to do through these stronger alliances and partnerships is to focus other countries in ways that we haven't seen before on how to deal effectively with the challenges posed by China. We have much greater convergence between us and partners in Europe, between us and partners in Asia, among all of us, in confronting these challenges. And I listed a few areas in which we're working much more closely together. And as I've said before, when you bring just the United States to the table, well, we have a lot of weight, but when it comes to economic issues, for example, where China's engaged in unfair practices, where it's engaged in overcapacity to try to drown our industries, our communities, our workers with their products, well, when we're taking that on and we're doing it alone, we're 20% of world GDP. When we're doing that in concert with allies and partners across Europe and Asia who are similarly aggrieved by these practices, well, we're 50, 60% of world GDP, and it's a lot more effective in getting China to change its conduct. So those are just two ways in which we've used this investment in our allies and partners to get real results, to tackle real problems, to meet real challenges. And again, through so many of the issues that are affecting the lives of our people, we brought countries together in a way that's going to have a material impact on making things better. I mentioned earlier the coalition we built on synthetic opioids, on fentanyl. You've heard me say this before. The #1 killer of Americans aged 18 to 45 is fentanyl. And it's by definition a problem that has to be tackled cooperatively with other countries, because the ingredients that go into making it may be made halfway around the world. They come close to our borders. They get synthesized into fentanyl. They come into the United States. They kill people. So the fact that we brought all of these countries together, now working in close concert to deal with this problem, that's going to have a material benefit on the lives of the American people. In these ways and so many more, what I take satisfaction is that we now can approach each of these problems from a position of much greater strength, much greater effectiveness. Disappointments? Yeah, of course. There are always many. There's always the things that you didn't get done. There's always the coulda, woulda, shoulda that you ask yourself. But I think it's also important to take a minute and take stock of what we actually have done, what the men and women of this department have achieved. Would I have wished, do I wish we could have gotten the ceasefire agreement months ago? Of course. The suffering since, the lives lost since? Sure. Could have been avoided if we'd gotten this over the line sooner. But in something as complex, as complicated, where different events have intervened and the work that we had done, the progress we were making toward bringing it to conclusion was delayed or derailed, as the president again said yesterday, almost every time you're trying to deal with something this hard, and as George Mitchell put it so well in the context of Northern Ireland peace, you're going to have many, many days of setback and struggle before you get to that final day of success. But every one of those days of setback and struggle is necessary to get you to the day of success.
Thank you for your service, and thank you for taking our questions over the last 4 years. Since the Gaza war erupted, there has been a flood of reports supporting videos and evidence of potential IHL violations by Israel, and yet your department has refrained from making a definitive assessment. There's a sense out there that you gave Israel a pass on this issue and that that's part of the administration's legacy. Is there any chance you will deliver a definitive assessment on this in your final days? And if I may, on another region, we're reporting that the U.S. will impose sanctions on Sudan's Burhan today. Could you confirm whether the administration will take that step, and why do this now, and why wait till now?
Okay. Thank you. We and I take very seriously the work that we do, and we have a responsibility to do, to assess in any place whether violations of international humanitarian law are occurring, war crimes, other abuses of international law, international norms, international practice. And that's what we continue to do every day, whether it's in Middle East, Gaza, or in many other places around the world. And I'll come to that because your question about Sudan goes there as well. In Gaza, we faced a uniquely challenging situation in trying to make final determinations. Because uniquely in Gaza, besides having a population that's been trapped there, that has nowhere else to go, you have an enemy that embeds itself in and among civilians, houses, hospitals, mosques, schools, and getting a clear picture and a clear understanding of whether any one incident in that context constitutes a violation of international law in one way or another is an incredibly complicated thing to do, especially to do in real time. So we continue to gather the information. We continue to assess it. If we have any conclusions that we can draw in the time that remains, we will. I'd also point out that in Israel itself, there are hundreds of cases that are being investigated. They have a process. They have procedures. They have rule of law. And we also look to them to carry out that process, to carry out the rule of law themselves. That's the hallmark of any democracy. We have reported in a number of ways on what we've seen, including in the NSM report. We've taken actions in a variety of ways in a variety of places, particularly, for example, in the West Bank, where we've seen abuses committed by extremist settlers against Palestinians, and for the first time, taken action against them. And I believe and trust that this process will continue, and as we are able to reach results, we will. When it comes to Sudan, you know the actions we took in the direction of the RSF just a few days ago. The SAF has also committed war crimes, and it continues to target civilians. It's obstructed the advancement of peace process. It's refused to participate on numerous occasions in ceasefire talks that we've sought to convene. And together with the RSF, it's caused what is the world's worst humanitarian crisis that people are suffering through every day. And we believe strongly, as we said, there's no military solution to this conflict. So we have to see two things. We have to see the effective provision of humanitarian assistance to people who need it. We've been working very hard on that. We've seen some progress, but not nearly enough. And we have to see the end of the firing, the end of this conflict. And there we've seen virtually no progress. So in this situation, we're able much more clearly to account for actions that are taken. There's no ambiguity about the environment in which both sides are operating and what the results of the actions that they've taken actually are, both in terms of the horrific consequences for human life and what that means under our law and under international law.
Michelle. Follow up on that, thank you. Is the RSF and Burhan, are they equally responsible for mass atrocities? And are these sanctions a sign of a failure of diplomacy? And then real quickly on the Middle East, how would you describe your dealings these past 15 months with Netanyahu?
So on the RSF and the SAF, the actions we took on the RSF, as you know, had a determination of genocide. The actions that we're looking at for the SAF go to war crimes, so there are gradations in these things, and we follow the law. We look at the criteria. We look at this intensely with our lawyers, with our experts, in order to make these determinations, guided, as I said, by the criteria. The end result is, one way or another, people are suffering grievously in Sudan. It is, again, the worst humanitarian crisis in the world, and we have been deeply engaged with our diplomacy to try to bring it to an end. We haven't to date. But as I've said, part of our challenge in any of these situations is to keep working through it, to keep pushing, to keep pressing, to get to that one day of success. It is, for me, yes, another real regret that when it comes to Sudan, we haven't been able on our watch to get to that day of success. As I said, some improvements in getting humanitarian assistance in through our diplomacy, but not an end to the conflict, not an end to the abuses, not an end to the suffering of people. We'll keep working it for the next 3 days, and I hope the next administration will take that on as well. On the last 15 months, look, one of the things I think is really important is, as a general matter, to focus less on personalities and on people and more on policies. And what is it that we can do? What is it we should do to affect those policies? And so what we've been working on over the last 15 months since October 7th was to help shape the response in a way that accomplished three basic things. One, of course, to try to ensure that October 7th could never happen again, and to make good on our commitment to Israel's security. Two, to prevent a wider war, a broader conflict that drew in more countries, more groups, both because that would bring even more death and destruction, and because it was exactly what Hamas was looking for: get that wider war, be able to have others attacking Israel, and to allow Hamas to continue to do what it was doing. And third, of course, was to try to do right by the people who were caught in the middle of this crossfire that Hamas initiated: the children, the women, the men of Gaza, with better protection for them, with more assistance for them. And that's what we've been focused on these 15 months. None of that changes what's happened, but it has put us now in a position where there is the real possibility for moving this to a better place. The immediate possibility, more than possibility now, the immediate reality of finally moving Gaza to a better place, finally getting hostages home, finally getting relief that people need, finally having an opportunity to have an enduring ceasefire. But also, as I was talking about with Matt before, in the region, as a result of the extraordinary setbacks that all of these actors who are responsible for the death, the carnage, the inability to make progress, the setbacks that they've encountered, whether it's Iran, whether it's Hezbollah, whether it's Hamas. So that creates a real moment of opportunity. And as I said, we've done everything we can to put in place, to make the investments and the plans necessary to take advantage of that opportunity. We're handing them off, and my hope, as I said, is the administration that's coming in will continue them.
The Senate confirmation hearing for Scott Bessent, President-elect Donald Trump's pick for Treasury Secretary, is now underway. Let's tune in.
I believe that the previous administration was worried about raising U.S. energy prices during an election season, and I am perplexed to see that National Security Advisor Sullivan, on his way out the door, is raising the sanctions level on Russian oil companies. And indeed, the oil prices in the U.S. are up about 9% this month. So what was good for that administration is being foisted on us. But having gone from, I think, low-level sanctions to mid-level, that if any officials in the Russian Federation are watching this confirmation hearing, they should know that if I'm confirmed and if President Trump requests, and as part of his strategy to end the Ukraine war, that I will be 100% on board for taking sanctions up, especially on the Russian oil majors, to levels that would bring the Russian Federation to the table.
And I will only take 30 seconds. Let me just get 30 seconds. Thank you for that, because I think it's important that we don't take these tools out of the toolkit. We can litigate what the past administration did and when they did it, but increasing pressure on Putin to bring about a resolution, I very much appreciate your willingness, and I hope you will be an advocate for keeping those sanctions on and actually advancing them even further. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Warner. Senator Langford.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Bessent, good to see you again. Thanks for the time in the office to be able to talk through a lot of these details as well. I was interested to be able to hear your statistic you shared earlier that after the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act of 2017, now we've had several years to be able to see what happens. And now I believe the statistic you gave is the top 50% of earners in America now pay 98% of the taxes. Did I hear that correctly? Because I've heard over and over again that it is only the wealthy, only the big companies that get it. I would encourage, quite frankly, every Oklahoma company that's a small business to ask their CPA this year when they're filing their taxes, what if the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act expires next year? What would my taxes be next year? And have small business owners ask that question of their CPA, and I think they will be quite surprised based on all the rhetoric to say this is only about big companies and wealthy people, that every small business will quickly find out, oh, it's them as well. It'd be the same thing on the child tax credit. If Tax Cuts and Jobs Act goes away, it gets cut in half in the child tax credit, and all the inversions that were happening under the Obama administration where American companies were being bought up by foreign entities. Now that's actually switched. Now American companies are buying foreign companies and those jobs are coming here. So there's been a tremendous amount of benefit in that. The one challenge that we've had on this committee has been a conversation with Janet Yellen about Pillar 2. And it started really 4 years ago now, 3 years ago, where the conversation was about, well, we really don't need Congress to act on this. We feel like we can do unilaterally. We can change America's tax policy for all businesses in America. And now in the last year, they've shifted to say, well, we're going to have to come back to you at some point to be able to get this. In the meantime, a deal has been negotiated that literally helps European countries and hurts the United States on this. And they negotiated a deal that exempts China from being affected by this at all. My question to you is, are you going to engage on this issue of Pillar 2? Number one, have this committee involved in writing taxes, which seems to be consistent with the Constitution. And then what is your message to other countries if they try to implement Pillar 2 on American businesses?
Thank you, Senator. As we discussed in your office, Senator Langford, that I believe that any, especially European country, but any country that in the next few days before President Trump takes office is intent on implementing Pillar 2 will find it a grave mistake. That the taxation of U.S. companies is a sovereign issue, and that authority lies with this Congress, and I will respect that. I will work with you to undo what I think has been a terrible policy.
Yeah, which I would agree, and many members in this committee would agree, that not only they went around Congress violating the Constitution, but it deliberately hurt American companies. And I just think that's really terrible policy on it. It truly was America Last policy. On the energy side, you've talked a lot about energy production. I'm Oklahoma, and unashamedly, we're all the above and all the below energy. We probably have more wind and hydro and solar production in my state than any other state on this dais, with very few exceptions, but we also use oil and gas. And we're going to produce all the energy that our state needs to be able to make sure that we stay stable on that. One of the issues that is a business issue for small or large businesses that I've been fighting for is a stable bonus depreciation amount. This is not about the type of energy or the type of business even. It's if you're actually investing in your company and trying to grow your company, that you would know what that bonus depreciation. Now, this will help with pipeline productions, but it will also help a pet shop and a hair salon and a restaurant just as much as well. And so thoughts on bonus depreciation and just a stable rate for that?
So, Senator Langford, you're referring to the 100% immediate?
Yes, what has been in the past, but for, quite frankly, a stable rate, period. Right now, we have a diminishing rate that's unpredictable.
Yes, so I think that increasing the after-tax return on capital for U.S. companies, especially small business, is one of the greatest forms of job creation that we could see. And to go back to your point on energy production, we've heard much here today saying that we are at a record amount of energy production, and we know that's a canard. We are barely above where we were in 2020, and if we were to look at the Department of Energy projections for 2024 and 2025, we are well below those. The past 4 years, we have seen U.S. production constrained, and part of a fulsome sanctions program would mean that we need more energy production in the U.S. to make up for the loss of sanctioned Russian oil, to protect the U.S. consumer.
Right, which is American jobs, which is American income, which one of the things we're going to have to deal with is the intangible drilling cost punishment that was actually put on all the independent oil and gas companies in my state and everywhere else that drives up the cost for consumers as well. That's another issue that this committee needs to take on. Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Thank you. Senator Hassan.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and again, congratulations on your position. I look forward to working with you and all of our colleagues on the committee. And thank you, Mr. Bessent, for being here. Congratulations on your nomination and for your willingness to serve, and welcome to your husband and children as well. We are grateful for their willingness to share you with the country. I appreciate you meeting with me in this process and sharing your priorities at Treasury if you are confirmed. And I want to follow
Welcome to NTD News Today. Here are today's top stories. The ceasefire deal between Israel and Hamas terrorists is facing serious challenges. Israel says Hamas is making changes to the deal after having already agreed to it. Israel's government is now delaying a vote to approve the truce. Senate confirmation hearings are underway. Today, Doug Burgum is one of 4 in the spotlight. He's Trump's pick to lead the Department of the Interior. California winds ease up, allowing firefighters to make progress, but several arrests of suspected arsonists keep authorities on edge. President Biden makes a last big move to protect U.S. networks from hackers from China and elsewhere. What we know about the new executive order. Ukraine and Britain sign a 100-year partnership treaty seeking to strengthen bonds in a post-war future. This comes just days before Trump's second presidency and an expected shift in U.S. policy toward the war.
This is NTD News Today, live from our global headquarters in New York City.
Today's Thursday, January 16th. I'm Stephania Cox. The ceasefire deal between Israel and Hamas terrorists is facing serious challenges. Just a day after Hamas agreed to the deal, it now seems to be up in the air again. Israel's cabinet was supposed to vote on the truce today, which didn't happen. A spokesperson for the Israeli government says that's because Hamas now wants to change the deal.
There has been a walking away from certain aspects of this agreement to free our hostages, which was agreed to previously, but now Hamas have walked away. Only a finalized deal, which is agreed to on all sides, can be brought to Israel's cabinet.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's office says it wants Hamas to back down from what it calls a last-minute crisis. Until then, Netanyahu's cabinet won't meet to approve the ceasefire. The Prime Minister's office accuses Hamas of pulling out of certain parts of the agreement. That's allegedly in an attempt to, quote, extort last-minute concessions. Netanyahu's office did not elaborate on what those concessions are. Yesterday's deal basically says Israeli troops have to slowly leave Gaza while Hamas releases a certain number of hostages every week. The U.S., Qatar, and Egypt are the mediators of the ceasefire deal. The spokesperson for Israel's government says the mediators know that Hamas made changes to the truce after it was already agreed on. He added that Hamas is an organization which is known for killing people. It's not known to stick to deals it previously agreed to. The spokesperson also didn't confirm what concessions Hamas is trying to get, but he hinted at a part of the deal which allows Israeli troops to stay in the Philadelphia corridor for now. He says that's crucial to prevent Hamas from smuggling guns into Gaza. Now to Florida, where Governor Ron Desantis has made his choice to replace Senator Marco Rubio when he leaves office to become Secretary of State. Desantis today picked Ashley Moody, the state's Attorney General, for the spot.
In true governor fashion, he gave me a mere couple of hours to figure out what I was going to say to you. But that is because he is deliberate and takes nothing lightly and understands the importance of this role. Governor, I want you to know I will not let you down, I will not let the citizens of Florida down, and I will not let my country down.
Rubio was picked by Trump to serve as the top U.S. diplomat and is expected to easily win confirmation in the Senate. DeSantis said Moody could be sworn in as soon as Monday afternoon, shortly after Trump takes office. In his final days before leaving office, President Biden is making a move to protect federal networks from overseas hackers. It comes after a months-long review by U.S. officials of key hacking operations blamed on Russia and China that took place during the Biden administration. According to a draft, Biden is set to sign an executive order that will task federal agencies with using stronger encryption to protect federal employees' calls and texts. The directive gives the Department of Homeland Security's cyber agency more power to gather key data from other agencies' networks to investigate hacking operations. The executive order also makes it easier for the Treasury Department to sanction cyber criminals. The directive calls for new programs aimed at reducing the billions of dollars worth of identity fraud that has affected Americans. A 5-decade political career is coming to an end. President Biden delivers his primetime farewell address to the nation as he prepares to pass the torch to President-elect Trump. NTD's Daniel Monahan reports on the speech and reactions to Biden's presidency.
Good morning, how are you? President Biden's political journey has spanned decades. He served as a senator from Delaware, then as vice president under President Barack Obama, before being elected president in 2020. His term concludes on January 20th when he hands over the reins to President-elect Donald Trump. Biden began his farewell address with a familiar message, calling on Americans to come together, but quickly turned to warn about the growing dangers posed by concentrated technology, power, and wealth in the United States.
Today, an oligarchy is taking shape in America of extreme wealth, power, and influence that literally threatens our entire democracy, our basic rights and freedoms, and a fair shot for everyone to get ahead.
Biden also voiced concerns about what he described as an avalanche of misinformation and disinformation overwhelming Americans.
Enabling the abuse of power. The free press is crumbling. Editors are disappearing.
The president criticized social media companies for abandoning so-called fact-checking initiatives.
The truth is smothered by lies, told for power and for profit. We must hold the social platforms accountable to protect our children, our families, and our very democracy from the abuse of power.
Recently, Biden took aim at Meta's decision to discontinue its fact-checking program, calling it really shameful. Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg defended the move in a video statement, saying that fact-checking has become too politically biased, resulting in censorship and a loss of trust. In his address, Biden also highlighted the need for strict governance over artificial intelligence.
We must make sure AI is safe and trustworthy and good for all humankind. And as the land of liberty, America, not China, must lead the world in the development of AI.
Gentlemen, Biden called for a constitutional amendment to end immunity for sitting presidents as well, and advocated for banning members of Congress from trading stocks while in office. Ahead of the speech, the White House released a fact sheet summarizing Biden's accomplishments from pandemic response efforts to other key initiatives. However, Biden leaves office with his approval rating at the lowest point of his presidency. A recent CNN poll showed that only 36% of U.S. adults approve of Biden's performance, with especially low marks on immigration, foreign affairs, and the economy. Public reactions to Biden's presidency varied widely.
I only experienced chaos, especially big city like New York, you know. For us, average person, we want safety, jobs. That's all we care. We don't care about Ukraine.
He did do some good things with regards to unions. He tried to do a lot of other things, but in the end, it was just a mess, and he really should have just withdrawn earlier.
I think Biden's legacy would be a man of character and decency. We have seen a lost that.
I think Biden did a phenomenal job, and I'm sorry to see him leave, and I'm really sorry that Kamala is not going to be our next president.
The president's farewell speech comes on the heels of a breakthrough in the Middle East. Israel and Hamas reached a deal for a hostage and prisoner swap, along with a 6-week ceasefire set to take effect on January 19th. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
Congress could soon have its hand on Part 2 of the Trump investigation report. It includes information about the classified documents case. Special Prosecutor Jack Smith has until 2 p.m. today to turn in the rest of his report to a federal judge. Judge Eileen Cannon ordered the Justice Department to deliver a copy of the report for a closed-door review. This is so that any sensitive information about Trump's co-defendants doesn't come out. Judge Cannon had previously blocked the release of the second part of the report, saying it could compromise the pretrial rights of Trump's co-defendants. California Governor Gavin Newsom will join a group of GOP governors and House Speaker Mike Johnson to raise U.S. flags to full height on Inauguration Day, according to Newsom's spokesperson. Flags are being lowered at half-staff in honor of late former President Jimmy Carter. The flags will be re-lowered after Inauguration Day on January 21st. And the House Intelligence Committee is set to have a new leader. Speaker Mike Johnson has removed Ohio Congressman Mike Turner as chair. The move comes days before Donald Trump is sworn in as president. Johnson yesterday denied that the president-elect urged him to remove Turner as the panel's chair. He said he made the decision because the intelligence community and everything related to it needs a fresh start. Johnson said it was a House decision and that Turner did a great job in the role. The House Intelligence Committee's top Democrat, Congressman Jim Himes, said he was enormously concerned over the development. Johnson said he will announce Turner's replacement today. Former New York City Mayor Rudy Giuliani faces a civil trial starting today in Manhattan. The trial centers on whether Giuliani can retain his Palm Beach condominium. 2 Georgia election workers are seeking to seize the condo as part of a nearly $150 million defamation judgment against him. Ruby Freeman and Wandrea Moss accused Giuliani of spreading false claims that they helped to steal the 2020 election. Giuliani has already turned over his Manhattan apartment and other assets. He argues his condo is his primary residence and should be protected. The trial will determine the fate of the condo and other items, such as Yankees World Series rings Giuliani says were gifted to his son. Coming up, California winds ease up, allowing firefighters to make progress, but several arrests of suspected arsonists keep authorities on edge.
بیست 16 سال عمري ما هفت
اما داعش کردیان برانبر خشک و دایکان یزدی ما کاری که دور لهمو چمک دموکراسی و موافقانی مرو و انسانیت او بارودوخی که استهای به تایبت لعراق و سوریا بشه که دگرت و با حالانه که اداره اوباما کرد
مریم بو او هفت روز بو و داعش از کرد
تامبوم كراقوتينيز قريا بما متشكر بحر في ذا نبو باوان رحمنا
ودمنا سؤالنا من خادران نزل باوان نفستم بس نا ما قبس ناش بيجوش باش.
They would literally be auctioned in front of soldiers, and then the soldiers begin to bid.
زارود وان همو جيبر تي حمري زارود الدم واسي سيبان همو جيبر
وحشیگریه که توا عیاره ظلمی که یک جار زور گوره لما افرطانه کرده و تعدایی که زور زوریان لیده کرده اما نه روزانه دست فروشیده
اليوم التوزيع كلنا نصيب.
Imagine being a child, having a child mentality, and these evil people come and wheel you away from the only safety you've ever known.
Every day, thousands of kids start vaping. And I can't let this happen to my kid. Of course, it's awkward to talk to your kids about the dangers of vaping. Hey, bestie, how sketch is vaping? It's hard to get their attention. Ready? Go. Yes, look at that. You didn't turn yours over. So if you want to talk to your kids about the dangers of vaping, you have to get it trending. Right, backpack kid?
Let's do it.
First, invite your kid to do the vape talk. Let's try this. All right.
Why is he here?
Yeah, I gotta get it trending, honey.
Come on.
Let's go.
Oh, honey, can we talk?
Yeah, what's up?
I see a lot of your friends vaping.
Visit talkaboutvaping.org for tips on when and how to have the vape talk.
California firefighters made significant progress yesterday as winds eased in Los Angeles. The red flag warning expired without causing explosive fire growth, reducing concerns. While winds could linger in the mountains, cooler temperatures and a marine layer are expected by this weekend. This should help crews gain more control of the fires. However, Santa Ana winds may return next week. Authorities also face challenges with arrests related to small fires. Since last week, several suspects have been detained for setting fires. Meanwhile, questions have arisen over the fire department's response, with criticism about staffing decisions. Firefighters have contained almost half of the Eaton fire and a fifth of the Pacific Palisades fire. Much of the United States is about to get hit with winter's most potent Arctic blast yet. Frigid temperatures from the Arctic Circle will arrive into the northern U.S. by early Saturday morning. The cold will then expand over much of the west and central U.S. on Saturday and reach parts of the south and east on Sunday. 4 million across the lower 48, temperatures could be almost 30 degrees below normal by Monday, and the wind chill will make it feel even colder. A high in the upper 20s is expected in Washington, D.C. It will be the coldest inauguration day since former President Barack Obama's first inauguration in 2009, when the temperature topped out at 30 degrees. A manhunt in Texas is on for a man suspected of shooting and killing a sheriff's deputy. Police say 56-year-old Robert Lee Davis, who also goes by the alias Sean Christopher Davis, is on the run. The Brazoria County Sheriff's Office said Davis opened fire on Deputy Jesus Vargas, striking him in the head. Vargas was taken to a hospital where he later died. The Sheriff's Office says Davis was last seen just before noon yesterday wearing a blue Nike hoodie and blue jeans. Davis previously faced charges of burglary, robbery, and evading arrest. He was being served a warrant on a sexual assault charge when he allegedly shot the deputy. And a development in Mexican drug cartel leader El Mayo Zambada's court hearing. He's decided to keep his lawyer despite a conflict of interest. The lawyer has also represented his son, who could be called as a witness in the trial. The lawyer, Frank Perez, is defending El Mayo from drug trafficking charges in the U.S. Prosecutors say they're discussing a plea deal with El Mayo, though they haven't gotten very far yet. El Mayo was taken into U.S. custody last July at a New Mexico airfield, along with one of their sons of the drug cartel leader, El Chapo. Now, the Department of Transportation is suing Southwest Airlines. The agency accuses Southwest of operating 2 chronically delayed flights in 2022, resulting in 180 flight disruptions. The agency said the lawsuit filed yesterday seeks maximum civil penalties. Southwest said it was disappointed the department filed suit on flights from over 2 years ago. The airline said since 2009 it has operated more than 20 million flights with no violations. Under DOT rules, a flight is considered chronically delayed if it is flown at least 10 times a month and arrives more than 30 minutes late at least 50% of the time. The department also said it was fining Frontier Airlines $650,000 for operating chronically delayed flights. Frontier will pay half that amount now. The remainder will be suspended if the carrier does not operate any chronically delayed flights in the next 3 years. Frontier declined to comment. Jobless claims in the U.S. are starting the new year heading upward. There were roughly 217,000 initial claims for unemployment insurance for the week that ended January 11th, according to the latest data from the Labor Department. That estimate is 14,000 claims higher from the week before, and it went above the expectations of many economists. Analysts say this employment cooldown and lack of job growth is a result of employers holding back on hiring as opposed to having mass layoffs. Continuing claims filed by people who receive jobless benefits for at least a week are near 3-year highs. The U.S. budget deficit is up sharply after the first quarter of the fiscal year. The Treasury Department says the federal government spent $711 billion more than it collected from October through December. That's about $200 billion more than the same period last year, a roughly 39% increase. The federal government's revenue comes primarily from taxes. Top spending categories are Social Security, defense, health care, and interest payments. The federal government last had a budget surplus in 2001. Canada's ruling Liberal Party is looking for a new leader to replace Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. The Liberal Party will pick a new chief on March 9th. NTD's Andrew Thomas has the details on some potential contenders.
Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau announced he intended to step down earlier this month. Now the country's Liberal Party has to pick a new leader. One possible candidate is former Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland.
We are clear that we are insulted as a country, and we are absolutely clear in making a firm and strong response is when we face illegal and unjustified actions from another country.
Freeland unexpectedly resigned in December after an argument over spending. Here she is speaking in 2018.
When people feel their economic future is in jeopardy, when they believe their children have fewer opportunities than they themselves had in their youth, that's when people are vulnerable to the demagogue who scapegoats the outsider, the other, whether it's immigrants at home or trading partners abroad.
Former Bank of Canada Governor Mark Carney is the only major candidate who is not part of the Trudeau government. Carney's name has been circulating for years as a potential Liberal leader, largely thanks to his financial credentials. In 2013, he took over as governor of the Bank of England, becoming the first person to ever head two major central banks. Another contender is Natural Resources Minister Jonathan Wilkinson, who served as Environment Minister from 2019 to 2021. Wilkinson has defended the oil and gas industry amid efforts to cut emissions. Here he is in 2023.
We released our updated modeling for the wildfire season. It is, in a word, sobering. It shows that the risk of wildfires is set to increase in June and remain unusually high throughout the summer across the country.
The Liberal Party will pick a new chief on March 9th. Andrew Thomas, NTD News.
Coming up, Ukraine and Britain sign a 100-year partnership treaty seeking to strengthen bonds in a post-war future. This comes just days before Trump's second presidency and an expected shift in U.S. policy toward the war. And in Germany, an NGO holds a film screening to expose persecution in China. A Falun Gong practitioner shares his parents' story of detention and torture. After the break.
I'm Jonathan Lawson. If you're 50 to 85, I have an important message about security. Write down the number on your screen so you can call when I finish. The lock I want to talk to you about isn't the one on your door. This is a lock for your life insurance, a rate lock that guarantees that once you're insured, your rate can never go up at any time for any reason. But be careful. Many policies you see do not have one. But you can get a lifetime rate lock from Colonial Penn. Call this number to learn more. This plan was designed with a rate lock for people on a fixed income who want life insurance that fits their budget and is simple to get. Coverage options start at $9.95 a month, less than 35 cents a day. Act now, and your rate will be locked in for life. It will never increase, guaranteed. This is lifelong coverage that can never be canceled as long as you pay your premiums, guaranteed. And your acceptance is guaranteed, with no health questions. You cannot be turned down because of your health. Call for your information kit and read about this rate lock for yourself. You'll also get a free beneficiary planner. Both are free with no obligation. Don't miss out. Call for information, then decide. Read about the 30-day 100% money-back guarantee. Don't wait. Call this number now.
Call now and you'll also get this free beneficiary planner. Use this valuable guide to record important information and your final wishes, and it's yours free just for calling. So don't wait. Call 1-800-357-4821 for your free information. That's 1-800-357-4821. There's no risk or obligation. That number again is 1-800-357-4821. That's 1-800-357-4821. 1-800-357-4821. Call now.
Just like all of you, I had problems sleeping. I had tried every pillow out there and nothing worked. I'd flip-flop all night, use my arm for support, and fall asleep, or I'd wake up with a sore neck or maybe a headache. Well, quality sleep comes from keeping your neck straight at night. You have to fill in that space between your head and your bed. That's why I invented My Pillow. My Pillow's patented fill adjusts to your exact individual needs, and it doesn't matter if you sleep on your back, stomach, side, or any combination of all three.
When I got My Pillow, I'm asleep almost immediately. I stay asleep at night, and I wake up more well-rested in the morning.
So go to mypillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to get Classic King My Pillows for only $19.98. Queen size just $18.98. Standard Classic My Pillows only $14.98. That's right, only $14.98. Plus all orders $75 or more ship absolutely free.
The Biden administration added more than 24 Chinese entities to a U.S. restricted trade list yesterday. One company was found to have a TSMC-made chip illegally used in a Huawei AI processor. The Commerce Department also strengthened controls on the flow of chips to China to better prevent diversion to Huawei. Huawei was placed on the entity list in 2019 and is now at the center of China's AI chip ambitions. Companies on the list cannot receive goods or technology exports without a license, which is generally denied. An Austrian advocacy group, None of Your Business, filed a privacy complaint today against TikTok, Shein, Xiaomi, and 3 other Chinese companies. The nonprofit claims the firms are unlawfully sending European Union user data to China. None of Your Business is known for filing complaints against American companies such as Apple, Alphabet, and Meta. The organization's efforts have led to several investigations and billions of dollars in fines. The Vienna-based group said this is their first complaint against Chinese firms. None of Your Business has filed 6 complaints in Greece, the Netherlands, Belgium, Italy, and Austria for suspension of data transfers to China. In the U.S., a federal ban on TikTok is set to go into effect on Sunday. The social media platform is owned by Chinese company ByteDance. South Korea's President Yoon Suk-yeol did not attend a second day of questioning amid a criminal probe into whether he committed insurrection. The investigation comes after Yoon briefly imposed martial law last month. Yoon is the first sitting South Korean president to be arrested. He was being held at the Seoul Detention Center after refusing to cooperate. Yoon's lawyer cited his health as a factor. The investigators did not elaborate on why they did not compel Yoon to attend. Authorities have 48 hours to question the suspended president. After that, they have to release him or seek a warrant to detain him for up to 20 days. That countdown has been paused as his lawyers have asked a court to review the legality of the arrest. They've also requested that Yoon's allegations of election fraud be admitted as evidence at his impeachment trial. Britain is building on its pledges to continue supporting Ukraine. Now, with a 100-year treaty to create a strong partnership after any peace deal is negotiated in Russia. This strengthened backing comes days before an expected shift in U.S. policy toward the war with President-elect Trump's inauguration. NTD's international correspondent Malcolm Hudson has more for us from London.
British Prime Minister Keir Starmer has pledged to help guarantee Ukraine's security for a century, offering Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky a 100-year partnership deal. This is Starmer's first trip to Ukraine since becoming Prime Minister last year, and he's keen to offer Britain's continued support ahead of President-elect Trump's return to the White House.
And I'm proud to speak for the whole of the United Kingdom when I say, we are with you, not just today or tomorrow, for this year or the next, but for 100 years, long after this terrible war is over, and Ukraine is free and thriving once again.
The 100-year partnership treaty will cover areas including defence, science, energy and trade. It also makes the UK a preferred partner for Ukraine's critical minerals strategy. Russia has captured 2 of Ukraine's 4 lithium mines. which potentially impacts Europe's access to the material critical for electric car batteries and other green technologies. According to geological surveys, Ukraine has an estimated 500,000 tons of untapped lithium. Starmer also said his current focus was on ensuring Kiev's forces were in the strongest possible position on the battlefield.
The route to a just and lasting peace comes through strength. We will work with allies to reject this aggression, uphold international law, and strengthen your hand now.
The UK has been one of Ukraine's biggest military backers, so far pledging $16 billion in military and civilian aid, though this sum is dwarfed by Washington's $63.5 billion. Trump's return to the White House could mean a potential shift in US support for Ukraine's war efforts. This in favor of a push for a peace deal. Trump's pick for Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, suggested on Wednesday that both Ukraine and Russia would have to make concessions to end the war. Malcolm Hudson, NTD News, London.
The U.S. imposed hundreds of sanctions targeting Russia yesterday. It wants to increase pressure on Moscow during the Biden administration's final days. The U.S. State and Treasury Department imposed sanctions on over 250 targets, including some based in China, taking aim at its military-industrial base. The Treasury Department also imposed new curbs on almost 100 entities that were already under sanctions, potentially complicating any future efforts to remove the measures. The new sanctions are issued under an executive order that a senior Treasury official said requires Congress to be notified before any of the actions can be reversed. Next, the Vatican says Pope Francis fell and injured his arm today. The Holy See Press Office released a statement saying the Pope suffered a contusion to his right forearm, but he did not break any bones. Doctors put his arm in a sling as a precaution. The 88-year-old pontiff has had a number of health problems in recent years. This is his second fall in a matter of weeks. Early last month, he had a sizable bruise on his chin after falling and hitting his bedside table. Pope Francis has used a wheelchair since 2022 due to mobility issues caused by knee pain. Turning now to the topic of religious persecution in China. In Germany, an NGO organized a movie screening yesterday exposing brutal persecution by the Chinese Communist Party. A Chinese practitioner of the spiritual group Falun Gong shared the story of his parents. They have been persecuted in China, and right now, one of them is detained in a facility notorious for cases of torture. NTD's international correspondent David Vivez has that story.
Karlsruhe Theater in Germany screened Letter to Messenger on Wednesday. The documentary tells the story of Sun Ye. Ye was detained at a messenger labor camp in China's northeast Liaoning province, all because he refused to give up his beliefs. He practices Falun Gong, a spiritual meditation system that teaches the principles of truthfulness, compassion, and tolerance. Falun Gong, also known as Falun Dafa, has been brutally persecuted in China since 1999. Audience members said they were deeply moved by the film.
I must say I was very impressed, not only because it was the first time I heard about this practice, Falun Gong. I'm grateful to have been invited and will do some research.
The screening was organized by German NGO Society for Threatened People.
It is absolutely essential that the national government and the EU remain consistently involved and take action. We must engage with states, including China, that systematically violate the human rights of entire ethnic groups in an intolerable manner.
Chinese Falun Gong practitioner and freelance researcher Lebin Ding was present at the event. Lebin's mother was detained in 2023 and has been since released. However, his father was sentenced in March 2024 and Lebin has received no updates on his status. His father, a tea farmer, is reportedly detained in one of China's deadliest prisons in Shandong province, where cases of torture, forced labor and organ harvesting have been documented. He found support from members of the European Parliament calling for the release of his parents. Ding Yuande, his father, was sentenced to 3 years in December 2023 by a court in Shandong province. European lawmakers and his family said the sentence stems solely from his faith in Falun Gong.
China, the People's Republic of China, keeps prisoners of conscience jailed for years and years and don't let them have any contact with their loved ones. This is an example, and it's time to speak up to free the prisoners of conscience in China.
1 year ago, the EU Parliament and member states passed a resolution calling for the immediate release of Lubin's parents. The resolution also aims to impose sanctions against the perpetrators and prosecuting them for their crimes. In December 2024, the EU's Vice President released a statement calling for comprehensive investigations into reported cases of arbitrary detention and torture. However, for persecuted spiritual groups in China, more action is needed. The Epoch Times reported in December 2022 that CCP leader Xi Jinping personally ordered a new global strategy to suppress Falun Gong practitioners. This includes a targeted disinformation campaign in Western countries. To this day, while facing threats from the Chinese Communist Party, Lubin says he fears for his parents and repeats his calls for the European Union to take stronger action against the Chinese Communist Party. David Vives, NTD News, Paris.
Thank you, David. Next up, Interior Secretary nominee Doug Burgum questioned amid a spate of confirmation hearings by Senate committees today. Concerns and his responses just days before the presidential teams make the White House transition. And Jeff Bezos' Blue Origin successfully test launches its new mega rocket. The company getting a step closer to competing with SpaceX in the satellite launch business. After the break.
Shenyun Creations, the streaming platform from Shenyun, featuring world-class dance, past programs, and all original music. Masterclasses, behind the scenes, comedy, and more. Explore shenyuncreations.com.
The impact of a meal goes well beyond feeding our bodies. Because when people are fed, futures are nourished. Everyone deserves to live a full life. And with your help, together we can end hunger. Join the movement at feedingamerica.org/actnow.
Hi friends, Richard Karn here. Now I'm known as the guy who can fix just about anything, but the technology in most appliances requires very special training to fix. My point is, even I know when I've met my match, and that's why my family has Choice Home Warranty. So we won't get stuck with high-priced repairs.
Choice Home Warranty covers over 25 major home systems and appliances. That's your AC, heating, plumbing, kitchen and laundry appliances, and so much more.
Imagine for less than a cup of coffee a day, Choice Home Warranty can help protect you from expensive major system and appliance breakdowns that your homeowner's insurance doesn't cover. But you have to call now before it's too late.
Every homeowner should have Choice Home Warranty. Your homeowner's insurance is not going to cover your appliances.
Washing machine, dryer, refrigerator, air condition. If I had any issues arise, they were able to take care of it immediately.
Now, homeowner's insurance won't protect you when your home's major systems and appliances break down due to normal wear and tear. But Choice Home Warranty will. They can help cover repairs and replacements.
Choice Home Warranty is the best warranty we've ever used. It would save you so much money in the long run.
Hey, I'm not the only one raving about Choice Home Warranty. They were named a Best Home Warranty Company and Best Claim Service by U.S. News 360 Reviews.
Call Choice Home Warranty now and get access to a nationwide network of over 15,000 technicians and the latest appointment setting technology so you'll know when they're on their way.
If I have an issue with an appliance or something around the house, I just call up Choice Home Warranty and I don't have to worry about that.
So, do what this old DIYer did and call Choice Home Warranty now before something breaks down. Tell them I sent you and get your first month free.
Call Choice Home Warranty before it's too late and get protection for your heating, AC, plumbing, kitchen and laundry appliances, and more. Call for your free quote today. Call in the next 5 minutes and get your first month free. 800-360-6782. 800-360-6782.
Welcome back. With the LA wildfires displacing thousands, many are in desperate need of basic necessities. NTD's Christina Corona was at one of the largest donation centers in the area. Check it out.
We're here in the city of Arcadia at the Santa Anita Park, which has been transformed into a huge donation center. It's one of the largest donation centers in the Los Angeles area, where hundreds of volunteers are helping many residents who may have been displaced due to the wildfires. As you can see behind me, hundreds of items are organized by department, from clothing, shoes, to pet supplies, to first aid. You name it, they have it here at this donation center.
The process begins with residents showing identification. Once verified, they're paired with a volunteer who guides them through the designated area to access items and essential supplies. I spoke with the lead volunteer, who provided further insight into how the system operates.
We have everything organized, from kids, men's, women's. We have some food vendors that are going to be dropping it off as well. So it's really a very strong community effort, which is pretty awesome.
They have a wide variety of items available, including diapers, baby formula, hygiene products for men and women, books and toys for children, and even supplies for pets, such as food for dogs, cats, hamsters, and birds, along with pet toys and leashes. Volunteers are on hand to assist residents, even helping carry items if needed. Many traveled from across the state to lend a hand. I spoke with one couple who drove from Northern California to donate hundreds of items to support those in need.
Well, we actually, from the Central Valley in Fresno, we brought about 8 pallets of waters. We brought dog food, we brought Pampers, we brought shoes and socks.
Obviously, most of them don't have homes, so they're just going to take what they can. Right now, I think they're just mainly hungry. They do care about other stuff, but yeah, food is essential to everybody right now.
After collecting their items, residents can enjoy free groceries to take home, as well as hot meals served by food trucks.
So if you have any donations that you would like to drop off, you can drop it off here at the Santa Anita Park. However, they did notify me that they will stop accepting donations this Friday. Reporting from the city of Arcadia, Christina Corona, NTD News.
And as severe weather events become more frequent, many home insurance policies are raising their rates, and it's impacting almost every state. A recent bank rate survey found home insurance costs rose in 35 of the 50 states between 2023 and 2024. Take a look.
The deadly firestorm in Southern California has decimated communities, and for some, home insurance won't pick up the cost.
For years, the whole condo complex was covered by farmers insurance, and then they canceled.
Peggy Holter's condo was destroyed in the Pacific Palisades fire. She says she's only covered by California's FAIR Plan, which offers basic state coverage, but far less than a typical home insurance policy. Personal finance company Bankrate recently did a study and found 7 of the 12 largest insurance companies have either paused or placed heavy restrictions on new home policies in California in the last year.
California should have laws that say that companies cannot just drop you.
This isn't just an issue in California. Extreme weather is impacting home insurance policies and coverage across the country. Last year, there were 27 weather and climate disasters across the U.S., with losses exceeding $1 billion each, according to NOAA.
We're seeing just this increase in the number of severe weather events, but not just an increase in the number, it's the severity of these events.
As severe weather events become more frequent, many home insurance policies are raising their rates, and it's impacting almost every state. A separate Bankrate survey found the average home insurance cost rose in 35 of the 50 states between 2023 and 2024, some as high as 15%.
What's happening right now with all those homes being destroyed, we're going to need a lot of building materials, a lot of labor to put them back together. So that could potentially deplete resources for different pockets of the country.
There's not much homeowners can do to change these rising costs. Experts say it could be up to each state or even Congress to regulate the market by passing legislation to protect consumers.
Doug Burgum, President-elect Donald Trump's choice to lead the Interior Department, questioned today by members of the Senate Energy and Natural Resources Committee. Joining us to discuss is Samantha Jo Roth. congressional reporter with the Washington Examiner. Good to have you with us today. The former North Dakota governor was expected to face sharp questions about his ties to the oil and gas industry. Could you outline the concerns raised on this front and how Burgum responded to them?
Yeah, hi. So nice to join you. Actually, I didn't hear that much about that, which was super surprising, considering, Burgum has sort of been like an intermediary between Trump and the oil and gas industry. A lot of the concerns that we are hearing from the committee Democrats really do have to do with just expanding the number of oil and gas leases, and what exactly he's going to do with that. So you can imagine, the North Dakota governor really talked a lot about energy independence. If you remember during Trump's, throughout the campaign, he really talked about his promise to drill, baby, drill. And this is, something that is a bit of a concern to some of the committee Democrats. They're worried that some of these protected lands are going to see a lot more drilling. And so that was a lot of the push and pull throughout some of the questioning. I didn't actually hear a lot of the questions about, topics of interest regarding, whether, he has interest in some of these oil and gas entities. Okay. That doesn't mean that they're not coming. The Department of Interior has had a long history with some of these ethical concerns. If you'll remember, Zinke, the former Interior Department Secretary, he was actually forced to resign and leave his post during the first Trump administration. And that had to do with some of his, lacks of disclosure and interest in the oil and gas industry. So this is certainly something that Democrats are thinking about, but whether or not they actually questioned him is another, is an open question.
On this point of the campaign promise to drill, baby, drill, President-elect Trump has also previously said that Burgum's role will help guide the U.S. toward energy dominance. Now, in the hearing, Burgum said that it was a false trade-off to shut down U.S. energy production in order to try to help the environment. What did he say about what he would consider using public lands for to improve America's balance sheet, as he put it?
Well, I think he talked a little bit about, he said that there needs to be a balance. So you would see a lot of questions, specifically we saw from Senator Angus King from Maine. He was asking about the wind energy. Former President Trump has been very much against some of this renewable energy, offshore wind. And Angus King, who comes from a state who has seen a lot of increase in that, was asking if, Governor Burgum could talk a little bit about, his experience with wind energy. And we've seen a lot of that in North Dakota. But basically, he would not commit to trying to speak to his boss about it, get him on board with it. He basically just said that there needs to be a balance between, the renewable energy and the fossil fuels. It can't really come at the extent of one or the other. This hearing wasn't one that we've seen as much with, some of the fiery exchanges, not as much of that. We did see just questions, more heated questions regarding, drilling and mining in some of those protected areas. One moment that was kind of notable was when Senator Alex Padilla from California asked if, the Department of Interior, which is one of the key departments which really helps with fires, would be, actually actively helping the state of California, and if they would not discriminate based on states and natural disasters. And basically, the former North Dakota governor had said that, they would be willing to work with them. He kind of did not answer a question about whether there should be conditions with any of those, any of the help or funds that would be provided by Congress. So that was interesting to note, too.
Yeah, especially as that is such a key issue right now that doesn't seem to be going away anytime soon, those fires. But some of the questions today focused on Burgum's perspective on climate change. For example, Senator Mazie Hirono sought answers on how Burgum sees the connection between fossil fuels and national security, which is something Trump has spoken a lot about too. Burgum did show support for carbon capture tools in eliminating harmful emissions as part of his response. Could you expand on some of the discussion on this topic?
So throughout that questioning, he, basically, Mazie Hirono's talked a little bit about how fossil fuels could be contributing to national security, and had referenced some previous testimony before this very committee, in which experts had talked about that. And basically, Doug Burgum had said that he was not aware of some of that. But, he basically had really tried to thread the needle through talking about expanding opportunity for, energy exploration, and, also, being somebody who cares a lot about conservation. So he sort of has to tread very carefully here, and also, embracing former president or incoming President Trump's ideas when it comes to energy and all of that. So, he's kind of skated around a couple of questions here regarding that, but I think he has very much proved that he is aligned with the president and is going to carry out exactly what President Trump is hoping for, especially when he draws on his experience from such an oil-rich state of North Dakota.
And lastly, what's your sense of how lawmakers are standing in regards to Burgum's confirmation at this time?
I think that you can say that I would say that an overwhelming number of these, the back and forth between senators was fairly friendly. You had Democrats and Republicans inviting, Burgum to their state to see, problems firsthand. So I just definitely would not consider his nomination at risk at this time. If anything, I do think that, he should sail through this committee pretty easily, and that he probably will win confirmation on the floor. Definitely not one of those more controversial nominees.
All right, Samantha Jo Roth, congressional reporter for the Washington Examiner. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
The ceasefire deal between Israel and Hamas terrorists is facing serious challenges. Just a day after Hamas agreed to the deal, it now seems to be up in the air again. Israel's cabinet was supposed to vote on the truce today, which did not happen. A spokesperson for the Israeli government says that's because Hamas now wants to change the deal.
There has been a walking away from certain aspects of this agreement to free our hostages, which was agreed to previously, but now Hamas have walked away. Only a finalized deal, which is agreed to on all sides, can be brought to Israel's cabinet.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's office says it wants Hamas to back down from what it calls a last-minute crisis. Until then, Netanyahu's cabinet won't meet to approve the ceasefire. The Prime Minister's office accuses Hamas of pulling out of certain parts of the agreement. That's allegedly in an attempt to, quote, extort last-minute concessions. Netanyahu's office did not elaborate on what those concessions are. Yesterday's deal basically says Israeli troops have to slowly leave Gaza while Hamas releases a certain number of hostages every week. The U.S., Qatar, and Egypt are the mediators of the ceasefire deal. The spokesperson for Israel's government says the mediators know that Hamas made changes to the truce after it was already agreed on. He added that Hamas is an organization which is known for killing people. It's not known to stick to deals it previously agreed to. The spokesperson also didn't confirm that concessions Hamas is trying to get, but he hinted at a part of the deal which allows Israeli troops to stay in the Philadelphia corridor for now. He says that's crucial to prevent Hamas from smuggling guns into Gaza. Now to Florida, where Governor Ron Desantis has made his choice to replace Senator Marco Rubio when he leaves office to become Secretary of State. Desantis today picked Ashley Moody, the state's Attorney General, for the spot.
In true governorship fashion, he gave me a mere couple of hours to figure out what I was going to say to you. But that is because he is deliberate and takes nothing lightly and understands the importance of this role. Governor, I want you to know I will not let you down, I will not let the citizens of Florida down, and I will not let my country down.
Rubio is picked by Trump to serve as the top U.S. diplomat and is expected to easily win confirmation in the Senate. DeSantis said Moody could be sworn in as soon as Monday afternoon, shortly after Trump takes office. Blue Origin has taken a big step towards competing with SpaceX. It successfully launched its new 300-foot mega rocket early this morning. Take a look.
Blue Origin's giant New Glenn rocket blasted off from Florida Thursday morning.
Checking for pressures are good.
It was its first mission to space and a giant leap for Jeff Bezos' company as it aims to rival Elon Musk's SpaceX in the satellite launch business. New Glenn, standing at 30 stories tall with a reusable first stage, launched from Cape Canaveral in Florida. Its 7 engines thundered for miles under cloudy skies.
We got to orbit safely. Congratulations!
Hundreds of employees roared in applause when the rocket's second stage made it to orbit and achieved a long-awaited milestone. The rocket's reusable first stage booster was due to land on a barge in the Atlantic Ocean after separating from its second stage, but failed to make that landing. The mission was a culmination of a decade-long, multi-billion-dollar development journey. It marks Blue Origin's first trek to Earth's orbit in the 25 years since Bezos founded the company. Secured inside New Glenn's payload bay for the mission is the first prototype of Blue Origin's Blue Ring vehicle. It's a spacecraft the company plans to sell to the Pentagon and commercial customers for national security and satellite servicing missions. Bezos watched the launch from a few miles away in Blue Origin's mission control room. New Glenn is expected to press ahead with a backlog of dozens of missions worth hundreds of millions of dollars. It includes up to 27 launches for Amazon's Kuiper satellite internet network that will rival SpaceX's Starlink service. New Glenn is the latest US rocket to debut in recent years as governments and private companies beef up their space programs.
For round-the-clock original news coverage, watch us live at ntd.com/live or download our NTD app. If you have any feedback, please email us.